and I am here with Deb Kozak.
Hello.
So I'm actually really excited to talk with you.
I'm excited to talk with you too.
Yeah, and so we'll just roll along with it. I know that you're a multi-term city councilor, and then you're our last previous mayor.
Yes.
So you have a lot of insight to this area that a lot of us kind of don't have. And I just love to hear about all of that. But what kind of got you started with how you got into just going for council the first time?
The first time I ran for council, I didn't get in. There were, I believe, 21 people running for city council seats, and I came in 7th.
So at the top 6?
Yeah.
Right.
And it was my first go, and I didn't really have a strong campaign. I spoke with a dear friend of mine, Brian Burnham, and I said, I've been thinking about running for council. I think I have some things to offer the community. He said, you're darn right, I'll help you. So basically all we did was we had a brochure. Brian helped me make a brochure, and he and I went door to door, and I had a couple other people, but it really wasn't a campaign team.
Right.
After the election, I had a few people come to me and say, if you would have told us you were running, we would have helped you, and please run again. So I did. And
what year was this? Like the first time?
The first time, let's see, it was, I got in 2005, so it would have been 2002, because there were 3-year terms when I first started, not 4-year.
2005, that long ago.
It was that long ago.
Wow.
That's amazingly long
So
time ago.
when I'm thinking about the change that has happened, that's like a lot of change, because just the past 5 years, this place is not what it was, but 2005. And that's actually kind of, I know a lot of people that, or not a lot, but when they make council runs, the first one a lot of times is kind of not half-assed, but it's, just looking at the way things are, I kind of want to go for it.
Yeah.
Put my name in the hat or the ring and see what happens.
When I ran the first time, the council that was in office just before I ran was the Dave Elliott Council. And I liked what they were doing. I liked that they really worked on the official community plan. I liked that they did the waterfront pathway. I liked that there were some plans going forward that were future thinking.
Right.
And saying, this is the way we want our community to look into the future. And I think they did some good things. And I thought, I'd like to work with this team of people.
So do you remember, because that was like, when you say the waterfront, that was before the soccer fields, or right around then. They're trying the whole thing with all where we're going to find a dog park and stuff like that. And then they filled in all the holes, new soccer fields. And
it was just at the time too, well, there was the reason that Dave Elliott got in as mayor was, I don't know if you remember historically, the piece of property right beside Walmart that was so contentious that it was going to be sold to Walmart for an expansion. And this being Nelson, they said, there's no way Walmart's going to expand and overtake all of our small businesses. We don't mind Walmart being the size it is to, for the size of our community, but we've seen what happens to other communities. Didn't
they want like a standalone, like one of the ultra mega things, and they're like, no, you can have the end of the mall, and that's that.
Yeah, and because it wasn't city-owned property, it was privately owned, right?
Right.
Yes, that's right. And it needed a rezone, it needed all of that. So there was a vision for the waterfront, that it wouldn't always be, Department of Highways and an industrial area, that it would be more for people. So the waterfront pathway, all of those things. So there were factions in the community that saw Walmart as a great opportunity for economic growth, as they would, some of them would. And there were others that said, no, this is not what we want. So there were a group of people, and Dave kind of led the charge, and that development was stopped. What they did was they bought the land. A group of them bought the land, and then they tried their darndest to get combination housing and...
was it Kootenai Landing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the community just went bonkers when that was when I was first elected. That came to the table. for final reading. I had been on council, it was my first go, it was 2005, and our first big decision was to pass this, it was third reading, to pass this development. So I read the volumes of information that I hadn't been privy to prior to that, and we actually had the meeting at the Hume Hotel because there were so many people that were interested, pro and con.
For the public, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a hugely contentious meeting. I mean, there were people that were passionate about, yes, this should go ahead, and no, it shouldn't. It's too big. It's still it's not the right fit for Nelson. And oh my goodness.
Well, look where we're at now.
Well, look where we're at now. So it was a split vote. That was, and John Dooley was the mayor at the time. He was elected mayor.
That was his first term, right?
That was his first
didn't
term.
he do 2 terms and then three and then you and then him? 3. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was the mayor at the time and wanted to see this through because he'd been on the prior council, and a couple of other people who had also been on the prior council. And we voted in this development. And after the meeting, I was really torn, and I felt that I wanted to have further discussion about it. So I brought back a motion to reconsider so that we could make sure that we're making the right decision. Wow. Everything hit the fan then.
Well, I kind of remember that there was, it's going, it's not going, it's going,
Yeah.
it's not going.
Yeah.
And then wasn't there something to do with like an
height.
extra floor of height because of the airport and all that stuff?
Yeah, there were, and that was not an issue because it was, the height wasn't going to, but there was all of this worry about that, and there was worry about it being just too much for that downtown area or the waterfront area. There would be a blight on the waterfront, you know, all of that. So we brought it back, and it was those defining moments in your life.
Yeah.
There's a few, eh? And I ended up voting in favor after I heard more debate and discussion, and also got more information. Because remember what I said, I think I'd been on council maybe 2 months.
Right.
When we had to make this
So
big
you just
decision.
walked right into it.
Walked right into it. And so the motion was passed, but as you know, the property is still lying vacant.
Yeah, no, they can't seem to do anything
Well,
with that.
I think there's a few issues around it. In the big scope of things, it's a fairly small piece of property.
Yeah.
And to develop on it and to put the pilings in and for a high rise and for all of those things, it's just a really expensive project. So we haven't had a developer come in yet, and it's changed hands a few times since that time. But that was my introduction to council.
Wow. Like, weren't they talking about like part of like the water development part of that? Weren't they going to push a pier far out or docking and stuff? And people were like, that's way too far. Like, can't do that. And
oh yeah, there was a pier. It was the height. It was the Pilots Association was freaked out because they thought they were going to lose their airstrip, which they wouldn't have. There was a lot of stuff flying around, and because of all the uncertainty from the public, I think that my read on it was I need to double check and make sure that all of this stuff is in place, and then and find out whether and really make a decision based on what is best for the future and what's best for this community. And who knows? I had one person say to me, it's maybe karma. That land has karma. It didn't want that development. Who knows? Now that's a very Nelson thing to say.
Well, that's a very Nelson thing to say, but also like Nelson when you look at the Nelson BC Facebook page, good God, man, people just go right out to left field, right out to space and just make crap up that's like, you can't even believe it's being said.
I know.
And then facts and reason don't matter. It's just nuts. Yeah. So, I couldn't even imagine that kind of thing happening now with all of that.
Oh, it would have been crazy. It would have been crazy. It was, that was my first round on council. That was my very first defining decision, and then it just rolled from there. I served 3 terms as councillor and saw some changes, and
Well, so you were, like the timing for that, you were there for all of the rec center too, because that thing had at least 2 or 3 different passes of, you know, what, when you'd see it in the mall, vote on this and all of that and stuff like that. And so that changed a lot. And then people were, I mean, the weird thing with that is I liked it the way it used to be. I miss the soccer field. I mean, I just like the simple pool. I don't, the water slide seems like the biggest waste of money ever because it's never on. When it is, like one person goes twice.
Yeah.
And then, but there seemed to be like less hours, less services, more money. And then within a year, they were needing like 100 or 200 grand to fix the roof. I'm like, it's brand new. It's not even a year old. And so it just seemed like a crazy thing. And
now that rec center was built. The new rec center was built just before I hit council. The new arena.
Oh, when it was started, because that came in the fall of 2006 or so, whatever. Like Hockey Day in Canada was in January, and it opened up in September before that. So I think I was. It
was being built just before I hit council.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think one of the things that I know is that the old Civic Center will never come down. It's holding up Vernon Street.
Right. Oh yeah, built the old school tough.
It's built like a bunker, right?
Yeah.
And there was a plan to remodel that building, and it would have been okay. They wanted to bump out the wall, make it an official size ice sheet. Rejig things, and there's a community in Ontario that has an old rink like that one, and they refurbished it, and it's still operating today. And I forget where it is, and I got in touch with them because I was really interested in it. But because we have such limited land base, I think it was a huge loss to lose the soccer field. It's also another green space downtown. As this community densifies, like we're seeing more and more infill housing in double lots and different things, and more people living in the downtown core, that would have been a lovely place.
I loved it. I totally loved it. But now you see the new building that's going down where I used to park to swim and stuff. It's like pushed right up against the wall of the water slide.
That's right.
I'm like, wow, that's like pretty tight, man. I wouldn't want to live right there against that. I just like privacy and stuff, though.
Yeah. But you're right. Things have changed a lot. And some things. I think every council that goes in tries to do the best they can for the community, but some decisions that are more critical than others. One of the things that I really tried to bear in mind was, if you build something, it doesn't just stay for 10 years or 20 years. It's probably for good. And so if you're going to make a decision to build something and have that legacy in the community, make sure that it's the right thing. And that was one of the principles I always had in the back of my mind when we were considering any development. I think one of the hardest things that we face at local government level is change in community when we became popular. Nelson is now known. I don't think we really need any more marketing. I think we're pretty well known.
Oh man, I got all mad when they did the Nelson Roslyn best ski resort town. I'm like, shut up, because people are gonna come, man.
And so when we're doing infill housing, when we're doing higher buildings so more people can live in a smaller area, there's benefits to that. You're not having sprawl, which is good. I think it's nice that we have bears and cougars and all sorts of trails and things, and let's leave some wilderness around. But I also think that it's important to make sure that whatever is being built is going to stand the test of time. It's going to be a good fit for the community, and that it's well made. I think I look at the mix of heritage buildings and the newer builds. I remember when the co-op went in. Oh my goodness gracious! There were so many people who were against that because they said it doesn't fit the heritage theme of our community.
I mean, what even is that anymore?
Exactly. Well, I think our heritage, we do have our heritage downtown is, I don't think that's ever going to go. But the co-op building, I don't see it as a bad fit, myself. I don't think that it's a bad thing.
I don't really think about the co-op building. I mean, at first it's like, oh, what are they doing and whatever, whatever, but I just, change is always jolting to people. You put in a bit of time, you just don't even think about it.
It's true.
I mean, it's turned into a good thing. They're finally getting some businesses, the standalone businesses on Hall Street, because those sat empty for quite a while and stuff. But it's, it was for a while sitting empty as a skating rink or a roller derby because the grocery store was just gutted and there was nothing. And so it might as well be used viably. And, more people come, we got to put them in. But I do like how the mountains, the way Nelson's built, you can't go too far. It kind of holds you in. You got to work with what you got. Yeah,
I guess the phrase is smart communities. I think Nelson was a smart community long before that became a phrase because we had to be. I agree with you.
Doesn't as much feel like that anymore. Just go to the Nelson BC page.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how we stop that kind of nonsense. I know when I was the mayor, when you're in the public eye, you're also a target. And people, when I would, I rarely engaged on Facebook because it was just craziness. But when I did a few times, when I provided factual information based on my knowledge to the best of my ability, and we have staff people that research the heck out of everything, and I researched like heck. It never failed. There was somebody or more than one person who would get riled up and refute it and say, no, that's not true, she's lying or whatever. And I don't know how you combat that. I don't know how you, hopefully there's people out there that realize that that's not the purpose of being in public office at all. Like when I took on the position of mayor, when I was elected mayor, I did it for the good of my community. I did it for, I wanted to see the community grow in a healthy way, and I wanted to put my efforts to work to do that. And my leadership style was criticized and by some people, but I think my style, is reflective of a lot of future leaders as well, and leaders in position now.
How do you mean?
Well, when I look at the Prime Minister of New Zealand and her approach,
she's awesome.
Her approach to inclusiveness, and that was what my commitment was to my council. It was, I don't want to have a split council or a divisive council. I want us, if we're disagreeing about issues, perfect, but no one will ever be stifled at the table. No one will be not heard. Even if I don't agree with you, that's just fine. That's why we have a diverse group of people, so we can have decent discussions and make the best decisions. And that's how I ran meetings. That's how I engaged with my council. I had one of my councillors when I was first elected that said, well, my boy didn't get in, so I guess I won't have any voice at council. And I said, you might be surprised how often we agree. Let's work at this. Let's work together. And we became friends after,
Well, that's a terrible way to go at it. Just like, we're just going to disagree, or we're totally screwed. I'm like, how do you even open up a dialogue that way?
You can't, right?
But I understand, like so Nelson, the fluctuating 10,000 people, who knows what it is now, but
I think it's just over 11, but it's...
Yeah, but anyways, just as a round number, so if you take office, even if you're going to run before you even get elected in, immediately 40 to 60% of the people hate you, no matter what you do. So that's like 4,000 to 6,000 people.
Yeah.
And that's like, if you have 60% approval, which is a big number, you still got 4,000 people that hate no matter what you do or say.
Yeah.
So like that's why I don't, even if I can't stand an elected official on whatever level, at least they have the guts to like man up and put themselves in there, and they're going to get just run through the meat grinder and just torn to shreds, and they're still doing it. So, you know, there's a lot of sleaze bags, but there's also people, they just want to do good somehow, or at least how they see it.
Yeah.
The big problem for me is people that, the divisiveness now where they just refuse to, you're on that side, I'm on this side, so we're not together.
And there's just on a global scale, we can't have that kind of behavior anymore.
No.
We can't have that us and them. I've been watching what's been happening in Afghanistan, and I'm heartbroken like everybody else about what's going on there. I think, and I'm really on pins and needles about our next election here. Like, we're in the middle of a federal election right now.
Oh, God, I don't even, like, I don't pay attention to news because, like, I've been written up locally to nationally, they never get it right.
Yeah.
So I just don't, like, you know, the advice of one of my friends who's been in a lot more media than me, and I'm like, I asked him years ago, do they ever get it right? And he just laughed at me and said, well, what I hope for is mostly accurate and not too damaging. Which is
that's
like...
That's a good philosophy.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty, that's how you survive.
Yeah. So I don't watch news, I don't pay attention to it. I actually got burned pretty hard recently. I'm going to probably bring that up later. Oh, just speaking out of turn in the worst possible way.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, I might as well do it now. So I was in, this was the end of June at some point. I mean, I can get the exact date. But I went to the Legion in Castlegar. Ty, the mural guy, was finishing his last day painting this amazing mural. So I was writing I just asked if I could come with my cameras and laptop, and I just, you know, didn't ask him much because that's not what I do. I kind of just write what comes through me. So I was, like, it was a gorgeous, gorgeous mural. And then, so I was writing, a day or two later, I was writing a proper post about it. And, you know, I got into about my grandpas in World War II and stuff, and I'm thinking about, like, the Nazis actually got a sub into Canadian waters and
they did.
And came up on shore and stuff like that. And then, you know, and I was friends of mine that have been, you know, in the military in the 90s, like high school friends and stuff like that. So I was writing all this stuff, and I was right into it. And then I just happened to look online, just take a break for a minute, and I saw a headline about canceling Canada Day. And I had no idea what that was about. To me, I just thought it was the wokies, just because that's like a carpet fire. You know, what are they going after now? So one of my friends, she posted on a Nelson page, I don't know what one, about if there's a Canada Day bike ride. And because a few years earlier there was one, and they got really drunk and they actually rode their bikes through the mall. And so they were, you know, they went right through Save-On Foods, through the mall and out Walmart.
Oh, Walmart! They went through Walmart?
I don't think they went through the store, but just like by A&W and stuff. So she's like, hey, are they doing that again?
Count me in.
Yeah. So what I did, I just like comment, because I'm in the middle of doing this thing about my grandpas in World War II and all this stuff. And so I just commented, some assholes are looking to cancel Canada Day. And then, so just thinking it's the wokies, okay? So then people went nuts, of course.
As they do.
And then, because I usually, like, I never look at a headline. I'll if it's something that catches my eye, because I don't look at news or anything, but I'll do proper, if something on Facebook's everywhere, then I'll look at it, then I'll start reading both sides and videos and look at like sources and go and kind of try to get some kind of informed decision. Like, who even knows what's informed anymore?
Yeah.
But so I didn't. I was just in the middle of this, saw the headline, said that, moved on, people lost it. So I didn't find out until July 5th that, like, a friend of mine came over, old high school friend, lives in Pass Creek, and he was just going off and off and off and off. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So then he's like, what, you didn't know? I'm like, well, I have no idea. And then he told me that they just found 2 mass graves.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, that's like...
That's why the firestorm started.
The worst possible thing ever. So I invite anyone who sees this or talks to me, because I'm open about it, use this as an example of don't ever comment on a headline without getting informed. Exactly. Because I'm like the exact opposite of what all that is. To me, like the whole thing of, would they estimate 5,000 children or something? I think that's a grotesque understatement for sure.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then you look at, I mean, logically, they're either going to be incinerated or they're going to be in graves, and you can't hide that stuff. Yeah. So it's so devastating and heartbreaking, and
it's horrible.
And just looking like, I'm still not even okay with the totem poles that came down from the Hume School, even though I know that they had to because they were rotting and stuff. But I think like something like a new one, like talking with the native elders in the area, and be like, okay, how can we replace this in your honor? Yeah. And then do a thing that's like involved with the schools and the kids to make it an annual kind of celebration. They raise it up. It's all done by the natives, and they teach, just their heritage, all that stuff, and then have a celebration. And then so that way the kids are getting educated every year, but now it's just gone. And then I think the same kind of thing should happen in the park, some kind of native annual ceremony. Because as much as I can't stand JT, that's an impossible situation to have been in for Canada Day leading up to, with all that stuff happening. Yeah. Like, how do you even decide on anything to do with that? Yeah. And so it's just, I mean, you don't even have words for how heartbreaking and stupid and wrong and just crazy it is. Yeah. But when I did that, because I'm like, I look at the big picture of Canada in the global climate too, in the current community where, the next wars are going to be over water, for sure. And then we're like the two places with the most water in the world, Russia and Canada. I mean, and then you're looking at China and Russia and stuff, and they're all making moves on the long term. Yeah, they are. And then we're just getting wrapped up in a lot of stupid stuff. I mean, it's not stupid, but it's when you're looking at what they're doing, and Denmark's already challenging our northern sovereignty. So with the the Northwest Passage melting off, so then you're going to have the shipping lanes with China and Russia and these new wars, and then the U.S. is sitting here without water already in droughts and stuff. So you got to look at the
That's why the Columbia River Treaty renegotiation is a really critical part of what's going on today.
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that because you said you were on boards or something to do with that. So let me have it. What's the boards for the Columbia River?
Well, in 2014, I was the president of the Association for Kootenay Boundary Local Governments. It's a long name. What it means is the local governments in the East and West Kootenay and Boundary area have an organization. And we have representatives from all those areas that sit on the executive, and we talk about issues of common concern throughout our region. And we take those concerns to the provincial government through the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, UBCM. I was also on UBCM. So when I was chairing this regional group, we knew that the Columbia River Treaty was coming up for possible renegotiation starting in 2014. And I said, we should really be part of this. When the treaty was struck, most people probably know or maybe don't know that local residents, local governments, and First Nations people were not consulted at all. As a matter of fact,
that's not surprising.
It's not surprising at all. It happened on a provincial and national level. So Diefenbaker started the talks, and there's a whole history there too. My dad grew up in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and his dad was a supporter of Dief the Chief. It's kind of weird. Anyway, when we discussed this at the regional table, and we said, well, it really doesn't matter if we're included or not, we're going to start talking to people in our communities, to the residents, to the citizens of this region about this treaty coming up for possible renegotiation. So we worked with the Columbia Basin Trust, which was fantastic. They have the mechanism there to help support us. And our goal was to go to each community and in the region and educate the people about the treaty, what it is, what it isn't, and what can we do about it if it's coming up for renegotiation. It wasn't long, and we started that process, and there was a great educational process. We had also feedback from people in community, and there are people today living who went through land expropriation by the government so that there was flood, and the hurt, what we discovered was the hurt and the anguish of that was still very present today. Yeah. And they said, we don't want to see this happen again. We want to be included, because what do we mean? What does a renegotiated treaty look like, or what's going to happen? So the province, of course, was aware that we were doing this work, and the province joined forces with us. And over the next few years, we pulled together a list of what we would like to see in a treaty renegotiation. More attention to the ecosystems up here, because our ecosystems are way out of whack because of the dams. They're huge. They're industrial dams. They're not recreational.
People don't get that here.
No.
They just like the... No. I mean, I message you about this, the e-bikes and stuff. Like, it's, you know, the rivers didn't dam themselves and totally screw the ecology. Like, no, it's not all as great as we're making it out to be.
No. And the dams are run at this time for the maximization, is that even a word?
I make up words all the time. I just look at Thor from the Avengers. That's a made-up word. All words are made up.
Okay, all words are made up. I make up that word.
Yeah.
To maximize the power production and flood control. But the ecosystem was never part of it. So we said, you know, that's one of the major issues we wanted. And there are people on both sides of the border that want that. So all of this consultation has led to a bond between local government, provincial government, and federal government. Myself and former Mayor Karen Hamling from the Cusp, we traveled to Ottawa and spoke to about 7 different federal ministries about what we needed here in the Kootenays. And so, although we're not at the negotiating table, we are definitely, local governments are definitely a part of the process. We had invited First Nations to join with us as well, and they were very gracious. They said, you know, thank you for asking to include us, but we are sovereign. Like, the local governments aren't even recognized. We're a creature of the provincial government. That's what how it's in legal language.
A creature?
A creature, yeah.
Jesus.
And but it's very old language.
Says a lot right there.
I know, doesn't it? But First Nations are sovereign.
Right.
So they are included at the table, which is fantastic. But we have shared information with them, they with us, and there is this great collaboration between all levels of government. People across the border are actually quite envious of the work that we did and how we have connected people. Of course, the Columbia River covers a much larger geographical area in the United States as it does in Canada, but we have the headwaters. So here's the thing. If we have control of the dams, essentially, there's an agreement, and either side could give 10 years notice to terminate the treaty. Right. That hasn't happened, but by 2024, they're going to have to make a decision on part of it, because one of the key pieces of language in it is that right now the United States has assured flood control. So the waters are managed by the Army Corps of Engineers and BC Hydro, on either side of the border.
Right.
And they coordinate flows for power production, flood control, and everything. In 2024, it goes to on-call flood control, which has not been defined. So what is
on-call?
Yeah. I think the people that designed the treaty 50 years ago were really smart. That was a way to get people back to the table. So on-call hasn't been defined. Does that mean the United States picks up the phone and says, please turn off the water, we're having a flood down here? That's just not the way it's going to work. So that's one of the things that's happening right now, is they're discussing that at that table. I'm not privy to those discussions. They're confidential. But I'm really still very much interested in how that's going to turn out. And I think when you and I spoke previously, I said to you, I saw the work that we were doing with the treaty as a way to better unify this entire region, because we are as diverse regionally as we are locally. The East Kootenay, as we know, is politically opposite to the West Kootenay, and then we have the boundary. But what we do have in common is this river. And one of the things that we were able to do was to open discussions with people, even if they were contentious discussions, based on part about, well, what's the Columbia to you? What's it mean to your community? And and it just opens the door for better things. And I really think that doing that and having a more unified voice here helps us provincially, because we don't have the population base of Vancouver or whatever. And so we need to have a stronger and more unified voice. That was my goal.
We need that, because Vancouver, they don't know anything about it. They don't even, Vancouver looks at Prince George as northern BC. I'm like, have you ever looked at a map? Yeah. It's right in the middle.
I know.
And past Kelowna doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But we exist, and that's all, just from resources alone.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at the Columbia River, I mentioned this to you and you know of it. Anyone that sees or hears this, the Columbia River swim, I'm forgetting what it is. Christopher Swain, the guy that swam.
The Columbia.
Yeah. The entire thing. And in the whole documentary, when he talks about how the salmon were so big you could walk across the water and stuff, and they put in the dams and it just screwed everything up. And then you get into Washington where nuclear stuff was happening, and
the Hanford site.
I'm just I can't remember the name of the thing. I know it so well.
The documentary, you mean?
Yeah.
I know which documentary you're talking about too, and I don't remember the name of it.
Well, no, I know it so well because I have watched it and I have a copy of it.
And because you're a swimmer, and I'm a swimmer too.
Yeah, I'm that too. But I was, I'm messaging with him and stuff, but he ended up stopping because he did the Hudson River, because this whole thing was...
he swam a few rivers, didn't he?
Yeah, he swam a bunch of them just to get awareness for how we're polluting everything. But the reason why he stopped is because his fat cells were taking on all the pollution. And he's just like, well, I got kids, I can't keep doing this.
No, he can't.
And... but it was amazing. So then what you learn, when I saw the whole thing of salmon is you could literally walk on their backs. They're huge, and so many of them. And then the way it's all changed and stuff's just kind of dying out now. Well,
it's terrible. The history of this river is so amazing. I wasn't
source
aware.
To sea.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Oh, right.
The source to sea.
Right. I had no idea that the big salmon the Chinooks used to swim all the way to here from the ocean.
Yeah.
And they used to call them June hogs. They were like 85-pound salmon. Of course they had to be, because they needed the strength to get here. I find that so incredibly amazing. And to think that, the salmon stopped running here. They became landlocked, the sockeye, the kokanee salmon. When the Grand Coulee Dam went in. And it went in before these big dams, but these ones didn't help.
That's in northern Idaho?
Yeah. Grand Coulee is in...
Yeah, I was going to do a triathlon there. There's a half Ironman that's kind of famous there.
It's an incredible thing to see. I went down there. I was at a conference, and I was presenting on behalf of Canada for the Columbia River Treaty and for our region. And they took us on a tour of the dam. Wow. Yeah,
it's a proper dam. It's not these little things, for those who don't know.
Well, these ones are pretty big, but the Grand Coulee, it's incredible. how it changed. Again, it changed the ecosystem. You know, when we put in the 3 dams here, it changed our weather patterns too.
Oh, did it? When did they go in? Like, I only got here
60s.
in 99, so.
In the 60s, that's long before me being here, and
Yeah, but you know, just for all the boards and stuff, you have to study up on all of this stuff too.
Yeah.
Like, it's, you know, my friend that I used to do Grateful Dead tour with, he's a 2-term city councilor in Cumberland, and so when he first got voted in, it was, you know, how is it? He's like, man, it's so much reading. It's like, you're just reading and reading and reading and reading and reading and reading and going to meetings and reading. And
he's absolutely right. You know, I was talking with my friend Valerie Warmington. She was on council same time as me, and she's working in Lebanon right now. And she and I were talking about reading for enjoyment now. I didn't read any, I love reading books. I love books. I didn't read for enjoyment for a long time because there was this constant barrage of information that you need to be aware of, and again, like I said earlier, to make good decisions, you need to educate yourself and you need to study up.
Well, yeah, it's like, because when you're in that kind of position, you're making life decisions for future for everybody and for the land, for all that, like everything.
It's true.
So
yeah.
If you're just kind of winging it, you need to get out. Heave ho. But one thing I've wanted to ask you, well, probably a few things, but the one thing the most that sticks out, because this happened when you were the mayor, like towards the end of your term, were all the drainage down at the bottom of Hall Street. So because that was all torn up and people were kind of freaking out. I mean, people are idiots. And the way I say that is they'll complain that a road is broken.
Yeah.
It's like, the road sucks, why don't they fix it? So like, okay, so they fix it and they're like, oh man, stupid road work. Like, you're like, well, come on. Like, you can't just magically make things fixed. So people were complaining about, you know, how long it took and stuff. And I'm like, well, it's just, they got to fix it and they got to do it, and it's old. Everything here is old.
Everything's old.
And we're starting to hit that turnaround time. Like, we
are.
The buildings and the electricity, we're having a bunch of fires in the past few years from electrical and stuff. But the one thing is that vacuum shop guy, he's kind of like my hero because of the flash floods, and then you just see the water like pile up. Like, how is he even still there, that tenacious bastard?
I know, I felt so bad for him. Oh my gosh. It was terrible. Yeah. And well, when the Hall Street development, that work was probably there were a lot of stressful moments when I was the mayor. We did a lot of things. I can't believe the number of things that happened in 4 short years. But the Hall Street project, the biggest complaints were from business owners who were petrified that it was going to detract from their business and that they were going to go out of business. And
from which part of town? Like downtown or on Front Street or? Oh,
well, Finley's. They were upset. So was Dr. Bibby's office. So was Kootenai Moon. The fellow across the street that owns the brick building where there's physiotherapists and the vacuum shop.
On the corner, that one?
Yeah. And
but what were they worried about?
Access to their stores.
Oh, just while it was happening.
Yeah, access to their
common.
stores.
I mean, look at the Vancouver with the Olympics, Cambie Street, you know, building all the rail lines and stuff.
But but behind the scenes, there was always somebody stirring the pot to say it was to keep those fires burning, right? I mean, there were people that were anxious to see that had ambitions for council.
People are like that. I mean, people just do that as a thing now. Like, they're just, whether they believe it or not, they just want to start shit. And I think that's stupid. I mean, there's so many problems in this world. Why would you want to just add more instead of trying to add solutions and stuff? So,
well, one of the things that one of the other criticisms was that, why are you putting in all of this work into a sidewalk that nobody's going to use? Like, when, you know, the sidewalk was fixed so that you could take a little breather on your way up. Why would you put in things down at the waterfront? Why are you doing all these other improvements? And if you're going to dig up a street, that happens once every 100 years.
Right.
Like you don't want to be digging up your streets and replacing infrastructure on a regular basis. That's no good. But when you have an opportunity to, when the road was failing as well, like the road bed on that steep part of Hall, if we wouldn't have fixed that, I don't know, like the road bed, it was worn out. So if you dig up the entire street, why wouldn't you make things better? Why wouldn't you, especially when you get money, like we got grants to do the entire project was funded by grants.
Wow. Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, from the feds. The
so
feds
then
were
you
doing
might as well, man.
Yeah. So now I would say that the business owners who were most upset and skeptical, and also business owners on Lakeside Drive, because that's the main road to get to all of their businesses as well.
Right.
Well, we absolutely have to keep that road open. That's where the city works yard is as well. Like right at the end. So we always promised that there would be one side of the street that would be open, and there was always access to city staff. If there was an issue, our chief engineer was on call. And yeah, did it go perfect? No, but what project does?
It never does.
I mean, when you start digging stuff up, there's always stuff you discover that you hadn't anticipated. So there was a couple of glitches, but for the most
like
part,
life.
It is like yeah, it is like life. It is like yeah, infrastructure. That's a good one, Steve.
Yeah.
Infrastructure projects are just like life.
Yeah,
they really are. So yeah, that was a really stressful time. It was crazy.
I just thought it was all nonsense that people were freaking out because it needs it. Like I said, this whole town is hitting a point where it just has to be all the old
Wait
stuff.
till Baker Street starts getting dug up to replace infrastructure, because that'll be next.
Yeah, well, they were burying all the phone lines or something, or hydro lines a few years ago and stuff. But when you have it's a heritage city and it's all old and stuff. I mean, our version of old.
Yeah,
but,
it's definitely.
Well, no, I remember from a movie like guy from Ireland's like. Our new houses are older than your old houses. Like,
it's true.
So it's all relative, but when you just from looking at all the fires we've had in the past few years from electrical and stuff from these 100-year-old buildings, so you got to understand, like underneath the road, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not worn down. Things have changed, and so to replace it to me is not a big deal. I mean, it's actually improving it, and then when it's done, it's awesome. Like. Didn't they, or no, it was the paving last year. That's what bothered me, from the bridge to the bridge. Because that was, to me, 90% of that road was okay.
Right.
And so they're tearing up good roads just to repave them.
Now, the bridge to the bridge, that would be Department of Highways.
Yeah, that was like the,
not city.
That's the province and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think what I really feel is that our council should have been all over, should have like created a liaison with the province or something and tell them why we don't need the roads, do a proper thing. Like just put them off for a few years because we have people walking down the road randomly stabbing people. Like we have a real proper mental health problem here.
Yeah, we do.
That's really hurting people. So like the funding for those roads that were fine, at least 90% of them, that could have done massive things for the mental health in this area. And a lot of people don't think that that's being taken seriously.
Yeah.
And like I don't pretend to have any answers and stuff, but like even when I worked at the Best Western for a while, and I worked overnight, they'd start coming in at like 4 or 5 in the morning and just like threatening to stick you with needles and stuff like that because it's a automatic door.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you try to talk to the police and they're like, well, their hands are tied. And so it's a serious, serious problem. And I just think with those roads, they should have worked harder to convince them why we don't need the roads right now, but we need mental health. I mean, just for 3 years or 4 years, like, cause it's all, you just look at it, it's like the budget's one spreadsheet, you have here's the money for the entire area for all the stuff. So it's literally take the highways, put it into healthcare. It'll just, recalculate itself. And then you have the funding to bring in the people to help and stuff like that. And now with all the COVID stuff, like I just talked to a friend or a guy I know last week or this past week, and he has 5 friends that have committed suicide through all of this stuff. I mean, scattered all over, but that's like, you know,
that's horrible.
The whole COVID thing with like people are really wound up over that, obviously. But I mean, this is a very contentious place for that. Holy smokes! But
yeah, well, the vaccinated and unvaccinated and the and all of that. It's
but I like when I saw in January or I don't know, give or take, something like that. Like a Bonnie Henry, like a 1.5-minute interview or part of one of her press conferences where she said, you know, at the time it was something like 579 or 97 deaths. Only 2 of them were outside of long-term care homes. And I'm like, okay, well, now that you have that information, like you have to make some adjustments, like put in really stringent protocols with that. But of the 2 deaths outside for COVID, way more than that have died from ODs and suicides directly because of COVID, and they're not talking about it.
Yeah.
And because they're not talking about it, because they don't want to look, you know, hurt themselves, however way you want to look at it, you know, they're not doing anything really to solve that. And then people are losing their businesses, losing their families, and it's just gone bananas.
Yeah.
And there's no real even inkling of hope towards, like they're even trying to get into the mental health side of things. And
I think it's ballooned into such a huge crisis. It didn't happen overnight. And it needed attention long ago.
Well, it started, like, that I saw was from the Olympics, because they keep saying, you know, like, even leading up to it, for the years leading up to it, like, how many hospitals and schools did they close because there's no funding, and then they just kept shoveling it at the Olympics. Yes. And then they talk about the legacy, and then they're trying to pawn stuff out here because of the Olympics. They're like, shut up, that's not gonna, you know, whatever. Yeah. You know, stop trying to say that. But then Vancouver, because they wanted to show how great BC was, they like took a giant shovel to the downtown east side and just started shipping people out. Yeah. And then they closed the trail facility however many years ago. So it just started, like, literally from then is when I started seeing it. And it's just like an upward curve.
You know, one of the things that when our council was in office, you'll probably remember the full-page ad that the business community took out, slamming council for not doing enough about the situation in the downtown area with homeless people and people with addictions. And there were a few times I had my heart broken when I was on council, and that was one. It didn't stop me, but it was heartbreaking to the whole situation. With people who were struggling on the street, and then the business community struggling as well. And it couldn't have happened at a worse time for our police force as well. And
how so?
Well, we were in the middle of change with the police force. We had at that time, the chief was Wayne Holland. And Wayne, before I had...
Ben Nelson.
Before I had become mayor, he was at loggerheads with the province to set up a mental health car. I don't know if you remember that. There was it's not car 84 or something they called it. It was a model based.
Sounds like a movie.
Yeah, exactly. It was a model they used fairly successfully in Vancouver, where a policeman and or police officer and a mental health worker would be on shift together. And
24 hours? Or
well, no.
Just at least one through the day?
Anyway, there was this huge clash because the province said, well, no, that model isn't necessarily the most effective or the most economical for a small town like Nelson.
And the police chief saying, no, this needs to happen, and the police board at the time doing that. So when I was elected, there were a few things that were going on. We had a couple of retirements on the police force. We had one police officer who was on administrative duty. You might remember that because of an assault that had taken place.
I don't remember, but I know stuff has happened.
He was charged because of an assault. And so we were down about 3 officers anyway. And what that meant was that the beat officer was taken off because they didn't have enough power to cover. So when that happened, things were really ramping up in the downtown core with addictions and homeless situation and people coming to Nelson and homeless folks looking for a place to live. And there were incidents that happened. I think one of the most, and when I said it, this whole time broke my heart, I think one of the most awful things that happened was the murder on Baker Street that would happen between 2 individuals who were homeless.
The panhandling one.
Yeah, and that was just awful. And council was blamed for that.
How were you blamed? What?
It was our fault that we didn't have enough. And there were a couple of people who ran in the election on that platform. This is like Cal Renwick being one. This doesn't happen in my town. And it's the fault of council. So what happened was the ad was taken out, and the first thing I did was to pull together the police chief, city manager, Chamber of Commerce, mental health and addictions, and also some people from the nonprofit sector, and we had a meeting. And we decided how we were going to deal with this. The money wasn't forthcoming from the province for support to people with addictions. And so we said, what are we going to do as a community? So that's when the street outreach team became an entity, and it started to make a bit of a difference. The other thing that happened immediately, by that time, the police chief had retired, and Chief Burkhart became the police chief. And he put a beat officer back into place, and it was council's hope that we would have at least 2, but at least we have 1 dedicated beat officer. And I think the biggest thing that's evolving out of this crisis, this addiction and homelessness crisis, is that the Police Act is now currently being reviewed, which is a good thing. Police are saying, this isn't an issue of crime. This is an issue of mental health and addiction. We're supposed to be dealing with crime, but we're frontline mental health addictions workers in this war on, homelessness.
Well, they're put in a position where they're not trained for. They're trained for this.
Exactly.
They're not trained for that, but they're the only ones who are kind of thrown into it, and then they're getting burnt out like crazy.
Exactly.
And not know how to deal with it. So it makes no sense to me that the province would say to have a mental health person working, in that car. That's insane, because they're not looking at the big picture. They're just looking at stupid dollars and cents for their immediate, I guess, pay, their paychecks or something like that. Because you look at the trickle effect of what that can do.
Yeah, and I think the whole system is going to be overhauled. I think it's a good thing that the Police Act is being reviewed.
Is that locally or is that provincially?
The act that governs all of policing, and there was a review done on that, I believe, because when we were talking about doing all this reading and studying up. So as mayor, you're the chair of the police board. That's automatic. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that was challenged by Wally Opal when he did a review in the 90s. He did a review in the 90s. And he made a ton of recommendations. And I read that entire report when I was mayor. And I said, why aren't these being implemented? Like, there's a whole whack of them here that are really great. One of them being, like, the mayor doesn't necessarily have to be the chair, because it can be a real conflict of interest, because you're the mayor of the council and you're the chair of the police board, and it can be dicey.
There's so much conflict of interest with policing and the way boards and the police themselves and the review boards and all that.
And the Police Act, they're reviewing it, they're looking at, and there's submissions that have taken place now, and the public has been invited to make submission, and I think that's really healthy. I'm interested to see where that's going to lead. And the police board that we have here now has continued the work of working with community. Like right now, they're doing a community process around racial discrimination. And
what's that entail?
Well, I'm not sure because I haven't looked into it deeply yet, but they are addressing the issue. There have been accusations that police officers are biased, racially biased, and that may be true for some.
So you're just talking police then?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what they're looking at is how, and this is right across the country. There's been this, as you know, I mean, it's been headlines.
Well, I'm going to do a podcast. Two of my friends that were in the military, I was just in that article I was writing. They're twins, but they're police officers.
Wow.
And so they went military and then police. That's all they've ever done. So I'm going to go have a talk with them when I'm back in Ontario.
I'm going to be interested to see that podcast.
Yeah.
See what they have to say.
No, they're amazing. Like, they're just two guys that everybody, they can just like wake up in the morning and say hello on Facebook and 150 freaking comments and likes and stuff, right? They're just so well respected. They're good guys.
Those are the guys, that's the kind of people you want as police officers.
Well, yeah, like they want to help and stuff. So like the way I look at that police, I look at it like a garden. You just got to pick the weeds and you got to feed it. You know, the watering is basically like training.
Yeah.
There's not enough training once they're in. You kind of get fast tracked in, then you get put, you know, like I worked front lines of hotels for a decade, and that made me angry and cynical. And because there's no common sense, people are right out of their damn minds. But
I've worked with people a long time too.
But the police, they get called to the very worst of that all day, every day.
Yeah.
And then they're put into the mental health side of things that they're not trained for. And so, and then they don't have regular training. Like it's, you know, people are saying, get rid of the police. I'm like, you're crazy. You know, defund it. I think that's crazy. I think they need more funding, but it needs to go into training, like demilitarize them.
I think the word defunding the police is the wrong word.
Oh.
I don't think that that's what was intended at all. I don't think
some are saying abolish the police.
Yeah, like
that's madness.
Well, you can't abolish the police. They've got a job to do too. But we do need to pay attention to what's going on with homelessness and addictions. I mean, we just do. One of the things that I also thought made a lot of sense here in this area, there is it's kind of, you know, nobody wants to talk about the underbelly of communities.
I do. I don't do stigma, politically correct, taboo. I'm out with it. Well, I'm pretty known for that.
You know what? You know, one of the things that I don't think has been, well, maybe it has, maybe some people think it has, but in terms of addictions in our own area, in the Nelson area and in the Kootenays, there's not been enough attention paid to it here.
No,
and one of the things that we don't have, that I advocated for, is proper treatment centers for people. And right now, if you're struggling with addiction, the closest places you can go if you need to go for rehab are in Kelowna or Vancouver or Kamloops. And then maybe there's a private center. I know outside of Cranbrook, but who the heck can afford $20,000-$30,000 out of their pocket if you have an addiction? And we need one in the Kootenays. We need a treatment center here in the Kootenays for our own people, so that they have more access to help when they need it, when they want it.
Yeah, that's what I meant by tearing up roads that are fine just to repave them.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we don't need that right now.
Yeah.
And this is what we do need. That's why there should have been someone on council being like, just be the thorn in the provincial government side, say, just convince them why. Like the Queens Bay ferry, or the ferry they wanted to move the landing to Queens Bay, that's the only time I can ever remember that a sitting government has reversed their decision from people actually presenting feedback, because then they didn't really think about it. Like, yeah, sure, whatever. Then the people started getting mad and showing them why. Then they did research, like, oh, right, maybe this isn't the best thing. So which was awesome because Queens Bay, I mean, we got to stop just leveling everything just out of convenience. The people in the East Shore, they moved there long before the ferries were there, or the ferries been there long before them, so you know what you're getting into and stuff. Like, I've lived remote like that, so I don't complain about it like that. But I really think that I just think that the town has to somehow just convince the province better, because the whole thing of that person getting killed, it was like a year later on the anniversary is when that woman was walking down the road stabbing people.
Yeah.
So this is another time that I drove people crazy on Facebook. Because,
not again.
Well, no, I'm pretty outspoken. But what I mean by that is, and this was like I think it was in December or something, because they're all going, it's pushing the mural festival again. Yeah. And I'm like, we got a lot of murals, you know, let's put it on hold for a while, because I'm looking at things as elective and compulsory. I mean, we have tons of murals and they're gorgeous and I love them. But, you know, if they're not enough for you, then look at the mountains and the water. I mean, right now, that's not, like, we need to put everything into fixing the people, because that's the only problem we have going against us.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally it. I mean, I have work in hotels. I work with a lot of people from India and the Philippines. They come over and go to the Selkirk school, and then they all... So I know tons of them.
Canadian citizens.
Yeah, and they're awesome people, like just some of the greatest people I've met, hard workers, just kind. I mean, here they're way more entitled, but so I had a friend of mine from India just show up at my house like a month ago. I was down swimming, and he had his roommate who's from Africa, and he'd immigrated like 9 years ago. And somehow we're just talking about whatever, and then I just start ranting about how spoiled people are here, that they don't realize how good they have it. I mean, it's Canada, and then it's BC, look what we have here, and then they're just going off about how bad it is. And as soon as I said that, the looks on their faces, they both just started smiling, walking in circles, shaking their head. They're like, no, they don't understand how good they have it here. Yeah. You know, where everyone's complaining about everything. But I'm like, we don't have people coming into our village at night, chopping off our hands and taking our kids and throwing them in mines with AK-47s. I mean, we got water, we got all this stuff. So it's...
Yeah, when they talk about first world problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this place, like, sometimes it can really bother me. It didn't seem to feel like that way before, but in the past, like, 4, 5, 6 years, it's people just keep going at it of how bad it is here. I'm like, no, it's actually amazing.
It is amazing. I mean, and we do have the community. What I've noticed in the last couple of years especially is the community is really changing, and there are new people coming here, more like the tech industry that's opened up, Traction by Design. Malpass purchased Greg Malpass purchased the Legion building, and he's
I remember that.
Put all of that, renovations into it. The Legion still has the bar; they're happy, but the rest of the building belongs to Traction. Like, their Traction by Design is brought in workers, and they work remotely. And I think there's more and more people wanting that kind of lifestyle. I am interested to see what's going to happen to this community when COVID lifts a bit. This isn't going to last forever. People are complaining at world, you know, like, I know that things aren't optimal right now, but it's not going to last forever. And I'm kind of interested to see where we're going to land when everything is done. Like, I couldn't believe the housing prices that our housing prices continue to skyrocket. So what does that mean for young families? What does that mean for our homeless situation? What does that mean for older folks, like people of modest income? How are they going to continue here? You know, I worry about those kind of things.
Well, I learned a lot about this just firsthand the past year and a half being at hotels. So
sure,
I would have people. There's a guy from Winnipeg that came in. He was like in the East Kootenay the day before scouting, and then he was with us, and then he was going to the Okanagan. So he owns his home in Winnipeg, and then he works remote in finance. And then he had a $1.8 million property outside of Vancouver where he was going to do what he wants to do here. But he's like, now that COVID's happening, he's like, I don't want to be in the city. So he can sell his home in Winnipeg, buy one here, still have his 1.8 million. And they're like, literally there's things where a house will be up for 400 grand and people will offer 6. I had another guy from Ainsworth just show up, stay with us, and he bought a house sight unseen from the internet from England because his wife was from Canada. They've been in England for like 18 years. And so he's just like, well, when I saw him in the morning, he's like, yeah, I'm going to see this house that I bought, hope it's okay. And they just throw money at it. And then so people here are getting squeezed right out. I mean, like in the early 2000s, it was the Americans and Albertans that started kind of doing that until the housing crash in the States. And then then
the oil fields crashed.
Yeah, so... But that's kind of where it started, where they just show up for a month of the year and then their house is sitting empty. And then, like, I remember down Fisherman's Road, squatters just moved in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's like the money that they're throwing around is nothing we can, like, who can compete with a guy that owns a house already, can buy a place here for over asking price, still has a $1.8 million piece of property and can work from home and finance.
Yeah.
We can't deal with that.
No.
So people are just getting squeezed out all over the place around here and getting kind of disheartened by it. But then I've also had like a friend of mine, he lives in Crestova, and someone, same thing, a city person bought next to him or something, spent all the money, didn't matter, and then moves there and then gets mad at him because he has farm animals that make noise. He's like, what? Like, seriously?
Yeah.
Why would you move here? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, look where you moved. And so that stuff's happening. And it's,
I know.
we just needed to, it feels like we need to fast forward another year or two to see where things have settled, because it's just so crazy right now.
Like I said, I've been concerned about, I've been hearing too about houses going for well over asking price, and bidding wars happening as well. And we're not the only community that's happening in. The other thing that's a bit encouraging is that we've had 3 major affordable housing projects in the community pretty much completed, which is good. But the majority of those aren't for families. Those are a lot for maybe single folks, seniors. I know that there's been some more for people with disabilities. But I'm really concerned about young families and most people don't want to live alone for the rest of their lives. No. Most people couple up at some point, and we need to have spaces for that as well. And like you worked in the hotel industry, right? So the service worker industry, like the people that work in that industry can't afford to live here. They got to live outside the community.
That's a huge thing with the whole, like, I'm all about supporting local. You have to pay markup when you live in small community and stuff, but one of the problems, like, it's always about the business and stuff. Like, well, what about the people? Like, the businesses, their prices are higher, but they pay, because in retail and food and beverage serving and hotels, it's an atrocious wage that you got to live off on an already impossible cost of living.
Yeah.
And then prices are higher than that. Like, they're higher than normal, and some of it's out of balance. So I'm like, when the businesses start yelling, because I had to finally buy a phone just for a camera, and I've been like the last holdout, it feels like. But here in Nelson and Castlegar, the phone was $2,500. In Kelowna, it was $1,200. And I'm like, like I'm all for, like, I'll pay a few $100 more, but when you're asking for double plus another $100 at that price point, there's no freaking way.
No.
And if you're going to sit there and charge that kind of markup, you better be paying your staff a reflective salary.
Yeah.
Or else stop saying this, what about local? I'm like, if you want to keep saying what about local, then you got to support the people, like pay them proper so they can buy this expensive stuff. Like, it's a give and take thing to me.
Yeah.
Instead of just one-sided.
No, that's atrocious.
Yeah, that's what I said. I got in trouble for that, but I don't care because.
And then, you wonder why. And then you wonder why people are ordering online.
I have to. I was forced into it because of COVID. Like I'm legit, like with the day after we, last fall when the woman at the adventure got spit on and then had a heart attack. So I immediately phoned the government and said, okay, because we made national news 2 days in a row, because the day before it was in the co-op.
Yeah.
But so I phoned the government and I'm like, okay, people are losing their damn minds, especially here. Like, you know, a woman just had to be flown to, airlifted to Kelowna because of a heart attack, because it's getting spit on. Like, I'm legit, like we figured out my exemption because I kind of fit in a different category than all of it. Like just having it on my head, I'll start blacking out and hallucinating. Like that's why I don't ride with a bike helmet and stuff.
Wow.
Because I can't hold my head up and stuff. And so like when I do a triathlon, they think they're making me safe, but they're actually making it worse. I have less reaction time.
That would be so terrifying to be hallucinating because oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, you know, whatever. I'm used to it. But so, and then I have, you know, I was supposed to die the day I was born because I was born 6 weeks early. My lining in my lungs wasn't fully developed. So I kicked ass the day I was born. I feel like it's been trying to get back at me ever since, but I'm like that cockroach you can drop a nuke on and like still be standing.
It's got this impenetrable.
But I'm not allowed to. So I have, even now, I have both of my shots. I have a proper, right through the government, talk to the government, establish my exemption, and then followed what they wanted with, okay, go to your doctor. If they agree, get a note, you're good.
Yeah.
So now I have my note. I spoke with the government, spoke with my doctor, have a proper note. I have both of my shots. And places, I still can't even go to the grocery store anymore. And can't go to places like Cowan's, can't go to Marzano, can't go to the theater. They just won't let me in. And so even though the government has mandated, okay, we understand that people have serious pre-existing conditions and masks will hurt that, okay, so we've made exemptions. But the dumb thing is businesses don't have to acknowledge them. So I'm like, what's even the whole point? And they're like, well, we're mandating, it's a mandated health code. I'm like, yeah, but they also mandated those exemptions for reasons. Look, I have one, and they still won't let me in. So I'm like, well, this community support to me is bullshit because, and they, you know, Nelson loves to talk about being progressive and empathetic and compassionate. And like, they're full of shit because to me, life isn't about how you treat each other in the good times. It's how you do it in the bad times. And they basically want me exiled and people like me, you know, I'm not even allowed to go to a grocery store. So, and I look at it this way, if I was, you know we can't have dogs in grocery stores, restaurants, kitchens and stuff like that because they have fleas, lice, ticks, mange, you know, they lick themselves, they sneeze on everything, you can't do it. But there are medical exemptions to that. If someone blind comes in with a service animal,
absolutely,
literally no one's going to bat an eye to that. So now there's people here, there's dogs here, and then there's me down here. And this town wants to get mad at me for going to Amazon when they won't even let me in their stores. I'm like, seriously, go screw yourself. And so I'm like, I have a serious, like I've done a lot for this town and in this town, and they've just shit all over me, and like I'm pissed. So, and I don't.
I'm sorry to hear that. I wasn't aware that was happening with you.
No, I've had a guy try to fight me in the grocery store when I literally, because I just keep my mouth shut. I have my note ready so I can just show people, and I have my mouth shut. One less hole that's open, you know, and stuff like that. And it literally has letterhead from my doctor. He's like, anyone could have written that, and he wanted to fight me and block me off with his cart. But me being me, because the thing about stupid is it doesn't understand intelligence because it's too dumb to realize it. So when it's, by the time the interaction was done, it was him walking away cursing with me laughing, making fun of him. But like I've been dealing with that since, and now I'm just like, I have both of my shots, I have my exemptions, and you still won't let me in. Basically, you can go fuck yourself. That's how I feel about it.
I think that the last year and a half, people have almost become hysterical, either pro vaccination or con vaccination. It's the divide is what's alarming to me is that the divide seems to be becoming more defined. At the beginning, maybe I'm wrong, but at the beginning, when we were still all uncertain about what was going on or what we were dealing with, the mantra, like be calm, be kind, be safe, that Bonnie Henry keeps saying, seemed to be more in sync with what people were trying to do. But as time has gone on, it seems that people are becoming more polarized, and that's certainly something that I don't think is healthy or that we want to see at all. And what happened to understanding the needs of others? Whatever happened to finding that time to listen and to have some tolerance and really understand? I don't like that either. I don't think that's right. And there are like there's hysteria on both sides, and there are people who, for good medical reasons, can't be vaccinated. They have anaphylactic reactions, or somebody's gotten.
I know someone that that had a stroke from it.
Yeah,
too.
And so like they have some compassion, understand that, and again, it's about people not getting their facts straight too. You can still be a carrier even if you are double vaccinated. People seem to think that, oh yeah, I'm all good. You can still be a carrier. You may not be symptomatic, but you can still keep abreast of the medical research that's going on. Things might change, but as we know more about it, but educate yourself before you open your mouth. You know?
Yeah, well, that's what I said about the stupid native thing when I totally screwed myself. Like, not a stupid thing, but educate yourself. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
But no, like the one thing about the whole when they at the start because nobody knew what was happening and all that stuff, when they made they'd make one decision and then like a month or two later they would reverse it.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, well, I thought what you said was good, now it's not. I'm like, well, that's a scientific method. Mm-hmm. If you get any, I think that's like grade 4 or 5 elementary school, like, come on. And so,
as you know more, you shift to accommodate.
Which was my problem with the, with Bonnie Henry saying the 400 or 597 deaths, only 2 of them were in long-term care homes. Mm-hmm. And then, so I'm like, okay, now you have that information. So, or only 2 of them were outside of long-term care homes. Right. That's what I should have said.
Yeah.
So that's where you should have, now we have this information, and then we should kind of adjust protocols very stringent for that, and then adjust how we're doing it elsewhere. Like as you have information on a new thing, you have to kind of adapt with it.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people understand that.
No. Well, I think you're right in that, and that happens with any issue. I ran into the same thing on council. As the community shifts, or as you know more, you have to be open to change when the facts are presented that say, oh, well, we thought this was this way, but it's not. And we might be changing direction or doing something in a different way because we know more now. We know better. So let's make things better. That's the way to be in the world, I think.
Well, that's just life. It doesn't even factor in with people. The world makes the rules. We're not here for it, like we're just here because of it. It's not here for us. It's here before us, after us.
Yeah.
And change is the only thing that's consistent. And if you don't adapt and grow and evolve, it's going to leave you behind.
It is.
It's just the way it is.
It's true. Yeah.
So, because life's a mean, nasty.
It can be. It can be absolutely wonderful too, but it can be.
Well, yeah, but you look at it like from the moment you take your first breath, life's trying to kill you until it's successful.
And if it's not that, it's an eagle.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'm 5-0. I'm undefeated.
That was some story.
Well, no, it's like the whole thing was like a saga. Like from the first eagle fight, that kind of just, like I didn't expect that kind of reaction. I just kind of wrote a quick thing. And my friend was late who was helping with my gear, my friend Kendall. And then, so I just wrote it, posted it, and then he showed up. I wake up in the morning and the CBC is like,
all over it.
And I'm like, what? Like, and they're, because for me, like, I've lived in the bush, and I taught myself how to just be quiet. Like, I could walk in the bush barefoot, and I would sneak up on bears and deer and elk and stuff like that. So I've had literally like probably this far away from me with a mama bear, jumping up and down, snorting and hissing. It was a crazy experience. I was totally high on adrenaline and like I
fight or flight at its best, huh?
Well, there's nothing you can do. Like
No.
It was literally, the whole story is just nuts. But it was like right in front of me, jumping up and down, snorting and hissing, then turned and faced me to look me right in the eyes. And I could have slapped her with at elbow reach. And then she's just like, okay, like, you want to keep going here, kind of thing. And then I'm like, okay. And then she just turned around and walked up the hill. And then I took one step forward, and she stopped and looked at me. She's like, seriously?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. But it was like, I loved it. It was like and I've been charged a lot. Like I said, I scared a cougar up a tree that was like 10 feet behind me that I didn't know was there. I did it at night, and then I just stood there with a cougar above my head. So to me, this stuff is normal. Because to me, if you go in the bush, we're in the mountains. There's stuff there, and you do it a lot.
Or if you go in the ocean.
Yeah.
People go in the ocean not thinking there's anything in there.
No, well, the ocean's different. I was thinking of that in my swims, right? I'm not going to do that by myself for that long in the ocean.
No way.
Like when I started, because there was a point where, man, it was around 4 hours in, maybe a little less than that. But I was right out in the middle because I didn't want to be anywhere near the shores. So I wanted to be in the middle, and I wanted to be deep. But I hit a point the first night, both nights, but the first night, because I did it 2 nights in a row, and there was just weeds in the, like seaweed or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle, and like I started getting in my hands and my feet, and I was getting tangled up, and I was kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
Like I was.
Yeah, that would be
It
scary.
was frantic, but not panic. And so I'm like swimming side to side because I'm not trying to make forward progress. I'm just trying to find the deep water where these stupid weeds weren't.
Yeah.
And then they were wrapping around my neck and my face and stuff like that. It was crazy. It was like 20, 30 minutes of that. And then the next night I had to do that, but I couldn't see. That was a whole other thing. It's such a epic saga for the way it all went down. And then because like I went in unprepared like a day or two early, but that first eagle fight when I was training, I learned, because it was like full wings out, talons out, skipping off the water, coming right at me, and they can cover ground. It's incredible how fast they are, how much ground they can cover. And then when you're in the water as a person, that's literally the most vulnerable, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario was the day that I had to fight 4 more of them. So, but because all you have is just your head's popping up, and everyone's like, well, why do you think they were fighting you? I'm like, well, because I had a wetsuit on, they can't see my body. The water seemed more murky this year and colder. The smoke kept it colder.
Yeah.
And then, my head's just there, and I've been there for a long time, so it looks like a little bunny to them or something on top of the water.
Lunch.
So yeah, that's all it was. So the thing like the osprey did a flyby, and then geese did a flyby, and then the eagles like circling this one tree far off, and it's like a little 12-year-old kid that is going to shoplift.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, get on with it. You're not fooling anyone here.
Yeah.
And then it just like came down, and it was, and an eagle's been kind of like my spirit animal since I was a little kid. So I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. And I'm totally soaking it up, and time's kind of standing still for me, but it's still coming at me. And then I had to, okay, now I got to do something. This thing's coming right in my face, man. So all you have is just splash and yell. So I'm just splashing and yelling and also laughing and I'm appreciating it. And then my brain just starts splitting off in like 6 or 7 places because I'm like still treading water. And then this thing comes at me, and it was so close that it was one last flick, and then I was okay, brace for impact, but the water hit its chest And then it just like last second just went like that, inches from my face, and then went up behind me and not even 10 feet, because that's a ball hoop, I shoot ball all the time, and just stopped and then just dive bombed me. So I had to turn around and follow it. So I'm following it, I'm appreciating it, I'm still fighting back, and I'm still treading water, but I also have to, I'm getting swept away by the current, so I have to still swim back to shore at the same time. And then I'm like 6 thoughts in all at once, and then I'm also thinking of how fascinating the human mind is, that you can think of all those things broken down separately while bringing it all together. I was like totally blown away. So I've learned like when I had to fight 2 at once on the morning of my first swim, and so I say they weren't that close, sort of, because they were 10 to 20 feet away. And I know the dive bomb because now my version of close with an eagle is literally inches from my face, like inches from my face, where you can feel the wind cut from their wings.
Yeah.
So I didn't, like the first night, I did it on a Wednesday and a Thursday nights. On Tuesday, I found out like the most important person to shaping everything about my life was on life support, and she was coming off. So I couldn't get out of my head. I'm bawling my freaking eyes out in puddles of tears. And then I'm like, I just, ready or not, I got to get in the water. I can't be at home. I just got to get on with it. So I didn't get my nutrition dialed because I was trying to cut weight still, because I wasn't where I needed to be with my wetsuit, because I lost 5 weeks after a CAT scan in the spring, and I figured out why I'm hunched over, and I made adjustments thinking of the rest of my life, and I was in a lot of pain for 5 weeks, so I lost that. And then my new bike frame, the tube for the seat was an in-between size, so I couldn't find one, so I'm riding my bike without a seat.
Oh no.
Yeah. And then the smoke came, and I'm not going to blast my lungs in that smoke, so I wasn't prepared as I wanted to be physically. And so I had to swim with my wetsuit open, like unzipped, which means your core's open. And if you're swimming, yeah, so, and for that long, so if you're swimming, it actually drags too, because it's catching water and pushing it all in.
Yeah.
So I just had to do it. Like I was going to go like the next night and stuff, but I'd been up since before 7 in the morning, so I knew that I'd be up for over 24 hours by the time I was done and stuff. But I just had to do it, and I was totally in tears, and it was, my body was just collapsing and all this stuff. So got through it. It was gnarly. So at like before 2 hours, I was so cold, like I was beyond comfort cold.
Yeah, hypothermia.
At 4 hours, my teeth were hurting because they were chattering so bad. Around 6 hours, I started going into full body convulsions from the cold. And that's where the water started changing into chop a little bit. And then, so with the convulsions and that, I started choking on water and stuff. At one point, about 30 minutes left, because it was about 7.5 hours, I actually passed out while I was swimming. And then I just woke up when my face hit the water. And then, but in the pre-dawn, when it's still really dark and you can barely see silhouettes, that's when I learned that the eagles are out fishing. So that's
good tip.
Yeah, I didn't know that one. So I had to fight 4 different ones, but 2 at once. So the 2 at once, like they're circling, and they'll be like coyotes, where one's coming that's distracting you here, and they'll come at you from behind, and their talons, like they can, like I have a plan for if I was getting attacked again, and like I knew that I'd take this, I'd probably get that broken from the one talon, and then I'd go grabbing the other one and taking beak shots off the head, and then I would be pulling it under to basically drown it. Like that's the only thing you got, and you know you're gonna take hits kind of thing. So when I had the 2 of them, so I had like an orange kind of like a lifeguardy floaty thing, because it had a little bag that I was going to put my keys in, like a dry thing, but it wasn't big enough, so I got another dry bag for some other stuff. I had like some energy bars and some Gatorade and stuff, and so I tied them onto a long rope behind me so I wouldn't get tied up or kick them when I was swimming. So then when the eagles when it had 2 of them, I had to follow them around me, so I didn't have my back to them. And then I started getting twisted and tied up in my lines.
Right.
And then like they were literally wrapping around my neck, and it wasn't until they hit me in the face that I'm like, oh, and I picked those up and just waved those, and that's what scared the eagles off, like the ones that were like 10 to 20 feet, and they're like diving and bluffing, just like bears do their bluff charges. Like it's the same thing. And so it was crazy. And then I had 2 more singles. So now I'm 5-0 against eagles. But
after swimming all night.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my God, you must have slept for a week.
No, I didn't sleep much. And then like after the first one, like I got home, so I was up for about 28 hours, something like that. And then I fell asleep for just a little bit, but I just was crying over because of my friend. Yeah. And I'm still a total mess over it. It's changed everything. Like all the stuff I'm trying to do with triathlon and stuff now, it's completely for her, for the next 5 to 7 years. And it's the whole thing I'm doing for her. I'm basically looking at like I'm going to take the world and I'm going to give it to her daughter. She has a 9-year-old daughter that she left behind. Oh. And so the second night, like I slept like I fell asleep for 30, 40 minutes. I don't sleep much or well. I went to the ball court, and then I went swimming again at my place and kind of did some writing and just literally just laid on my back. I had this one friend played a song on her deck the first night of rain after like 2 months. And it's the only thing I could do. I just left it on repeat, and I just kind of laid there staring and just crying. And then I wrote quickly the whole thing about the first night, and then I'm like, okay, I got to go back. So I went back to do it again, and this time I was so crippled with anxiety because now I knew what to expect. Mm-hmm. And with like going into the cold and everything, and I was just broken into pieces because of her. Like I parked at some friend's place, they're right up from the 6 Mile, the Duhamel store, so they're like exactly a kilometer from the beach. So they let me, very graciously let me park there and just get my wetsuit on and get together and then walk to the beach and just pick my van up in the morning. But like on the walk there, I was so broken, like I'm not just crying, like I had to stop and collect myself. And then I'm like physically beat up, I'm just emotionally broken and all this stuff. And that's how I start. And then I have the anxiety from knowing what I'm about to do again. And then, thinking about the weeds and stuff. And so I get down there, and then I was in the water, at the start, because also 6 Mile Beach, I haven't been there since 1999. So I know there's an undertow, people have drowned there, so I'm like, okay, well, got to get through that and get in the water. And then just once you're in, it's swimming. So the second night, once I started swimming, I'm like, okay, because the whole deal was I just wanted to be in the water for the meteor shower. Thought it'd be cool. And then it turned into like this whole other thing. This art project that I'm doing that's all woven into it. And then it became about my friend Michelle. But once you're swimming's just swimming. I mean, so I'm like, okay, this night I'm thinking of the eagles. So I wanted to get further down by the pre-dawn eagle time, because I don't play the odds, man. Sooner or later they're going to go against you with anything. You do it enough. So, and I just saw if I was swimming, they come and swipe me on the back of my neck, I'd never see it coming. So you have to kind of tread water in that zone just to defend yourself or see what's out there. But so I just dug in and swam. I didn't wear goggles. I was going to wear them later if I needed to, because same thing as a mask, they hurt too much. Mm-hmm. Like I have this weird like excess fluid on my brain that like my whole head is numb. It's weird. Oh. Nothing to do with impairment or anything, or clarity of thought or anything. It's just a weird thing. But so having the goggles, like they just hurt so much. And for, if I had to be there 7+ hours, there's no way. So I was going to wear them after or later. So I just swam, and then at 2:59, I finally stopped. So I swam through 3 hours straight, and I've never swam like that before. It was super, super smoky. You couldn't see the mountains. And so it felt like I was out at open sea. Mm. And then, but so when I stopped, I popped up and my eyes were like raw. I couldn't see. I was just like, could barely open them, and I was squinting, and as soon as I stopped, hypothermia just crushed me. So I'm trying to like tread water, and I was freezing cold. And then I turned onto my back, and then when I was on my back, I was still cold, but I just kind of using that to rest. And then my eyes adjusted a bit, and there was like this one little pocket in the sky way up high. So I got to see some shooting stars.
Nice.
A few of them.
The whole purpose.
Yeah, and then so then I kept, but then the cold was happening, so I just turn over again, and I'm in the water. I don't even know what to do because I'm just broken emotionally. I'm broken mentally. My spirit's going quick, and then my body's just collapsing and breaking down. And then I tried like the little orange thing. I tried using that like a little flutter board, but you're not going anywhere. And my legs were already. I got like vicious shin splint feeling things. Like I used to get those really bad from tennis and track and field and basketball. So when you're doing that, like the muscles just, so I was like, I actually taped up this time, but I couldn't even kick. So I'm just sitting there, and it was now, I was literally in a life or death situation because I was so cold I could barely function, and I was just broken in every possible manner, which is kind of what I was expecting, but not like that, because I think we can all say what we want about ourselves, but you'll never know the truth about yourself until you're broken in every single way and the elements are closing in on you and no help's coming. And that's where I was, because I'm out in this freezing water, and there was like, I looked at the shore and I'm like, I can't quit. I just can't. Like, I know that I can do this, but I don't know how. And everything's closing down, and literally sitting there in this freezing water, pitch black, and like, no one's coming, no one's gonna find me.
Yeah, it's up to you.
It's totally up to me. And so I'm like, how am I gonna do this? And it was like, I was basically facing my maker. And so the only thing I could think of is close your eyes and swim blind. So, and I knew I had another 4.5 hours to go. So being that cold already, so I'm like that was a big moment. And the people that I've told this to, they're like, I would have quit right there and went for shore. I'm like, but I couldn't do that because I'm so mean to myself. I wouldn't have let myself live that down because I believe in myself. And I knew I could do it. I just had to figure it out. So then I'm swimming blind with my eyes closed. And at first it's just, you're swimming. But I had this thought on repeat. That was, it was like I was hovering above her hospital bed, and that's all I could see. Everything's black except for the light of her and me hovering above, and then I couldn't do anything about it. Like, I just saw her helpless, and then the emotion that I feel for her, I just, and the helplessness comes in, and then I get mad. It should have been me. 100 million times out of a million, it should have been me instead of her. She's just like the sweetest. Aww. She's like that person that everybody's not okay with. With me, whatever, death's been trying to kill me forever. So I'm the proper trade-off, but it couldn't. So the only thing that snapped me out of it was when I was crying so hard that I was in full body convulsions. And then, which is a really weird functionally thing to do, because when you're crying, you're breathing in and out, but your face is in water, and you can't do it. But my whole body was just seizing up in convulsions, and then I'd snap to, and then realize I'm like freezing cold, and I'm in the middle of this dark lake that's trying to kill me. So I kind of snap out of it, and then more times that I could count, I was actually turned around swimming towards Balfour.
Oh my
because
gosh.
I couldn't see where I was going because my eyes were closed. So now I'm swimming, I'm not only going through all of that, I'm swimming against the current backwards, sapping more energy and just crushing myself when, like I said, I was up for 28 hours and then no real sleep or nutrition through the day. And then that's what kept happening the whole time. And that whole thought on loop, and the only thing snapping out of it was the tears when I'm in convulsions. But what I turned it into was, because I was still doing this whole, the second night was a very specific purpose for this art project that I was doing for someone. And then So the only thing that pulled me out of it, and feels like it kind of saved my life because of the situation I was in, was all the pain and frustration that I was feeling for her, on top of, I just turned everything into love, and I just used love to pour into this other project that I'm doing and to pull me through. And like the whole thing just became about love. And like that's the only thing, the only reason I survived doing that, or that's what I felt. And then, so by the time I got through it, before that, I had to go through the weeds the second night blind. I couldn't see. So, and I had anxiety from that too, and I'm crying and all this stuff. But it was actually, the weeds were a moment of solace. Like it was for 20 or 30 minutes that I was in them. As soon as the first one hit my hand, instead of being kind of freaked out about it, I embraced it. So I didn't mind them on my hands, rubbing on my face, wrapping around my neck, and my feet getting tangled. I just did the whole Zen with it. And it was a transcending thing, and just showed me more of, I guess, what I have inside me or something, and pulled me through. And then as soon as I got through the last bit of weeds and knew I was done, then the reality of I'm freezing, this lake's trying to kill me, and then my friend on life support, or whatever, however that worked out, then I'm just back into that loop of crying, into being woken up, kind of snap out of it into convulsions, into swimming the wrong way. And then when you started seeing Nelson, it seemed to be, the more you swam, the further away it seemed to get. And it was like really frustrating. And I actually, I felt like I needed to punish myself the second night more, because I was supposed to come out right here, kind of in front of where we are.
Yeah.
But I came out at Red Sands Beach, which was a bit early. And I didn't, like, I wasn't okay with that. I felt like I was cheating, and
oh, no.
I needed to rectify that. So what I did the second night was I swam in, when I got kind of close to Nelson, I swam into the shore on the highway and traced that in. So I'd have to, because it really opens up here, widens, so then I'd have to cut right back across and against the current to get back to Red Sands Beach. And that felt like that almost killed me. That took so long. Same thing, swimming backwards, swimming with my eyes closed, even though it's daylight, and all these, the eagles weren't as bad the second day. They seemed to be worse on the shore, like the Proctor shore, not than the highway shore. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so I was tracing this side, so they didn't seem as bad, because you could see them across, way more active over there. And maybe it's just less house, I don't know, who knows.
Maybe that's where they live.
But yeah, so, but it was crazy. And then I got through it. I came here, I couldn't, I was so cold I could barely talk, or because I had a GoPro and I was trying to make a video, and I was up on the train tracks, and the guy in the truck that's on the track shows up. He's like, a train's coming, so I could step off the track, but I'm in bare feet on those jagged rocks.
Oh, that hurts.
And my legs didn't work. I couldn't get back up onto the track or down below. No. I'm like, oh man, I'm totally stuck, and I can't even do whatever. But then when I got back here, I just, like, my eyes were so bad. I could barely see at midnight that night. Like, they were just so red and raw, and yeah, it was
just washed all the tears and everything out of your system.
Yeah, it was a crazy experience. But it was like I said, I just feel like I came out with a huge epiphany, because my whole thing was I was just going to do it once for fun, for the meteor shower. That would be awesome. And then it took on this whole thing with my friend Michelle, and then this art thing for someone else. And then I'm like, okay, if I get through the first one, then I'm going to go do it the next night, do a second one. And if I get through that, nothing less than 7 nights in a row will be okay. I don't even care if I do 6. That's a failure to me. When everyone else is seeing what I've done, I just see what I haven't. Like, I totally feel like a total failure in life, because what I want to do is so astronomically high that I never attain it, even though behind me I'm leaving people's minds totally blown and inspired with what I do. I just see the failure. And so, and I've beat myself up horribly over it for around 20 years at least. Like, you know, a bunch of my friends have cursed me out over the years and stuff. Like, I'm way too hard on myself. Like, I was terrified of not doing 7, like, because I knew how much I would beat myself up. But when I came into the beach, literally right before my feet touched the sand, like, you know, up to my neck kind of thing, I was like, okay, now I got through the second one. I know I can do the third. I know I'm in really bad shape right now. I know I could do it one more time, but I couldn't do it more than that. Not in this condition, like maybe, you know, if I can do up my wetsuit and whatever, but my eyes were a big problem. But I knew I could pull myself through a third one. But I was like, you know, what's the point? I mean, what am I trying to achieve at that point? And that's where I had this like epiphany of I was okay with not doing it instead. And so what I've been beating myself up for like 20 years, very viciously, I'm finally okay. And if I hadn't have done that second swim, that never would have happened. And I knew, and especially when I was in that moment where at 3 hours where I stopped, I couldn't see, and that's where I said I felt like real answers about myself would come. Because when you're just broken in every single way, like I said, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, and there's nothing, and the elements are still trying to kill you, literally, and you have no help, then you really see about the truth about yourself. And if you have the courage to keep going, other stuff lays beyond that. And that's where, you know, that's where I was willing to pay the price to go into. So, and yeah, it was just a crazy, crazy thing.
No kidding.
But it just turned into this whole...
It's an odyssey.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like I tell people, like, it's this whole saga that started with the first eagle, and then that actually taught me how they really move, the ways other people don't see, because that was a face-to-face, like, full tilt encounter. And then both nights I went in flip-flops, and then I left them there, stashed them at 6 Mile, and I kept forgetting to get them in the morning because I was so beat up. I just like, I'm going home. And so I went up maybe a week later or something, and to get them, and so I went there and I just stood on the beach, and I'm now looking at the water more as my adversary and stuff, and like, yeah, nice try. And,
understandable.
Yeah, I got a new relationship with birds and stuff, and I had fish jumping all around my face, tons and tons of bats. I didn't expect the bats. And I was also thinking about like the big sturgeon that could be underneath me, right? And stuff.
There's some huge sturgeon in this lake.
So I was thinking about those and stuff. But so when I'm on the beach and I'm just kind of absorbing it, it's like a kind of a release and everything. Because Michelle, the day after I was done, that's when she died. And it felt like she was just waiting for me. So like I said, I found out the day before she was gone, the day after I was done. It was like she was waiting for me to get through this incredibly stupid thing. And then, so when I went back to the beach, and I'm kind of having this big release, and I was crying again, and then a eagle was like in this tree right above my head, not at the top, like kind of in the middle, and then just sort of just launched away and just drifted away. And it felt like it closed the chapter of the first eagle fight to all of this stuff that's happened in between, and then I made through it. It's like this total personal quest.
It's incredible.
And then, so now I feel like I'm ready to, because I've been trying to, I don't know what you know of what I've done or been trying to do, but my stupid body keeps sabotaging me, is trying to take triathlon to the world, because people seem to get a lot out of me doing that. So the more I do it, the more inspired they get, and it's media and it's all crazy to me, because I feel like I'm just screwing around. And I've never been worthy of people saying all these nice things they do to me and stuff. But now, after just the epiphany of coming out after the second and being okay with that, instead of beating myself up over it, and what I just faced with myself in the middle of the water when everything was shut down, I feel like I've earned the right, like I'm okay to go after the world now. And so now I have where I said that I'm gonna do, like, I'm gonna try and go for a world record in triathlon that doesn't exist, and it just means I got to do tons and tons of them. So I'm gonna do that, and then do that for. Now I'm using that, like the way I use that love for Michelle to make me basically not die out there and pull me through to find the strength. I'm going to use that to fuel this whole trip that I'm doing for triathlon, and then I'm going to give that to her daughter. There's a way that I'm already have kind of cooking up for that, that I'm going to give her at her high school graduation. So, which is like a 7 or 8 year kind of thing. So my whole thing is I won't leave my dog here, and as long as I have her, we're just road tripping Canada and the US, and then a year after when I don't have her anymore, because she just turned 8 at the end of May, so 3 to 6 years.
She's in good shape.
Come here, come on, up, come here. No, she's awesome. Celeste has a lot to do with that at the animal hospital.
Oh yeah, she's in great shape. Hello, sweetheart.
But so I figure 3 to 6 years, something like that.
Outside. Is that what you want?
And then that's when I'm going to go to Australia, New Zealand, like the first winter, and then over to Europe. And
cool.
Their homelands actually, I don't know which one of the modern nations, but it was, I think, Yugoslavia. So, but I don't know which one. So I might go there for her daughter, to the home and
Croatia
stuff. Croatia
or Serbia.
Yeah, I just...
Yeah,
so it's like this whole mission now, but this whole swim like literally changed everything about my life. And it's made it really weird for coming into town and stuff, because people want to talk about it and they're all crazy about it. And to me, I'm just like, that was what happened on Monday. And
it's Friday now, and I've moved on.
Like I was trying to tell that to the CBC, because I'm just like, this is not, it's a big deal to you, but to me it's just normal. So I have a total different take on it. And then the whole thing of the swim, when I'm telling people about that and they're saying how crazy it is, to me it's kind of surreal, because I went through it and it was nuts, but I'm just used to that kind of stuff and punishment on myself, and then having a broken body and the stuff I've had to drag myself through, because it'll be 28 years, September 8th, that my body started falling apart. And which is why I'm pissed off at this town for, I've been sick for this long. I lost 6 years of my life, or 5.5 out of 6 years of my life at one point, and now I can't even go to a grocery store.
Yeah, that's...
in this compassionate town of ours.
So that's not right.
But enough of me. I have one thing I want to ask you.
Okay.
Well, I probably have more. But in your time in council, whether councillor or mayor, what's like the thing that you felt like, maybe that you remember the most, but the thing I don't like the word proud, but most proud of that you accomplished, or like, do you reflect back on that, be like, yeah, I like that we did that, we could have done this better, or...
I have a few. I think one of the things that's for people that haven't been involved in government or local government or any level of government, it's so multifaceted. Like, for example, if you would have asked me when I was 20 years old if I would know as much as I do about sewer and water pipes, no, or basic stuff like that. But like, you're working with the entire community and the whole ball of wax. There's police, there's fire, there's housing, there's roads, there's community programs. It's everything. And if I were to choose a couple, the outreach team, bringing people together in a collaborative way to make something work for Nelson, when there was nothing else available to us as a resource. The outreach team to help with homelessness and addictions. That was really important.
Well, how challenging or whatever is it to work with the provincial government? Because you're in, your power, your term, whatever you want to call it, while they're changing governments too, Liberals, NDPs, all that.
It can be really challenging. I have to say, as mayor, I was nonpartisan. You work with whatever government is in power, and you have to be nonpartisan. But what I discovered was working with the Liberal government was very difficult. And
the Gordon Campbell one?
Yeah.
Or the Christy Clark?
Christy Clark.
Right.
And the reason I'm saying that is because, in my view, that government was out of sync with what was going on in the province. All of the ramping up for homelessness, addictions, all of these social issues were bubbling. The Liberal government closed the institution at the coast that helped people with mental health issues and just said, so long. Have a nice
they have
life.
a track record of that.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of a lot of the issues that we were facing in smaller towns. The Liberal government was in power for a long time, and they became more removed from people and communities, in my view.
Complacent with themselves.
Mm-hmm. And when we would go to meet with ministers at provincial level, some of them were quite dismissive. And we would say, these are you have your 15 minutes with a minister, and if you're lucky, you get to have 3 issues that you can discuss.
Right.
And we always went prepared. Always had a brief that they could give to their staff and to themselves as well.
Their readers.
and also we were prepared with what we would ask. Oftentimes it just fell on deaf ears.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
No. And then what I have to say, when the NDP came in, they had been out of office for a long time. They were eager to listen and to help. And it was like, for me as mayor, it was like a breath of fresh air. When I would say to them, we are struggling with resources in our community for mental health addictions. You have to help us out. We're struggling with issues around homelessness. We thank you for helping us pay attention to infrastructure issues as well. But I found that they were just a lot more receptive. And when they came through they had their election promises, everybody does. And when you can make a lot of promises, if you're lucky if you can do the work that can fulfill some of those promises, because usually the package is so big that to make any difference at all, you have to concentrate on a couple of things and get those really rolling. But I found that the NDP government, when they got into power, they were much more receptive.
Was that Horgan and then Michelle?
Yeah.
Well, like my problem with them was the Site C dam.
Yeah.
Where they just bold-faced lied to everybody, and then
Michelle
just disappeared. She was deleting comments and stuff on her page. People are picketing her office. Like,
yeah.
I can't believe, when I talked to Tanya Finley and Nicole Charlwood in the fall election, because the NDP, they're the only ones who were very government-y about it. The other two, they were very embracing and stuff, so Brittany backed out, wouldn't do it. Said something about time or something but they have the exact same amount of time as you, and you were prepared. Mm-hmm. But my first questions are like, I don't care what your platform is, why can I believe you?
That's a good question to ask.
Yeah, because I'm just like, I'm tired of politicians being politician-y.
Yeah.
I mean, even the moderators on the debates, they're just all fake and phony.
Yeah.
Why should I believe you?
Yeah.
And that's all I care about. Yeah. Because honestly, I have a lot more respect for an honest asshole than a dishonest nice person.
Okay.
Yeah. If they're a prick and they screw you over, like, well, what do you expect? But if they're like really nice to you and stuff, and then they just screw you over, blatantly lie to your face, then that's kind of hits you more.
When the whole Site C dam issue was, before the big decision was made, there were a couple of conversations I had with people. I think when you ask me what I'm most proud of, I think one of the things that I brought to the table and brought provincially, regionally, and nationally was that I wasn't afraid to have difficult conversations as well. If there is a contentious issue, we need to deal with it. And and if the conversation is difficult, let's have that conversation. So I did it nationally at policing. I did it around mental health addictions with the province. But I also, when I was chairing the Columbia River Treaty Committee, we worked closely with BC Hydro senior staff people.
Okay. From the coast or local kind of contingent?
And we, in the Kootenays, if anybody who's lived here long enough, there's a lot of people that move here know nothing about the dams and know nothing. I knew nothing about pre-dam landscape.
Source to see is what taught me.
Exactly, and until you research it, you don't even know.
Bart Simpson, what you don't know can fill a library.
Exactly, exactly. And so we were concerned about Site C as well. One of the quotes that the Liberal government made was that they were going to make sure that whether they got in or not, that project was so far underway that there was no turning back.
Right.
That was one of the promises they made, and I think that was something that came into consideration for the NDP government. Whether or not they made the right decision, I don't know, but I don't think damming rivers is. I don't think it's the way of the future. But of course, we have all these electric appliances and electric bikes and electric cars and electric everything. I think we have to figure out a different way. I'm really interested in hydrogen cells, but that's another topic. But when we had this BC Hydro senior personnel, they would come and they would educate us on the operations of the dams and on water flows. And let me tell you, that technical discussion, you could see people glazing over and saying, just a minute, because they're engineers. They speak engineerese.
Yeah, totally.
Another made-up word. And which can be a lot of fun. But we also were able to tell them, listen, you need to break it down for us because a lot of the stuff you're talking about just doesn't make sense to somebody that's not educated in all of this. And one of them, and I have great respect for her, we asked about the Site C Dam. And we asked about, why are you doing this? You see the devastation it caused here ecologically. Isn't there a better way than damming that river? And losing agricultural land, losing forests, losing ecology, and just drowning. Like Anne de Grace's book, Treading Water. It's about when the lands here were flooded.
Right.
So this woman, who really brilliant, smart engineer, she said, working for BC Hydro at the coast, she was, of course, one of the chief engineers on this, researching this project, this proposed project. And she said that she had the same debates with her kids who were 16, teenagers at the breakfast table, saying they were totally against Site C. And she wrestled personally with this. Like, it took a real personal toll on her too. But where she came down in favor of the project was for the future of the province. She said, when we do the projections about the needs for the population, for electricity, for hydroelectric power, we need this dam. And she said, as much as I am torn about it, that's how I've made my decision. I respect her for telling the truth. Like you said, you respect people for telling the truth. And it took its personal toll on her just as a professional working within BC Hydro. And they had deep discussions about it. Do I agree that we need another dam?
We got to make changes.
Yeah.
People are too, even through all this, you see the smoke and the droughts and the fires, still watering everything. Like my across the road neighbor had puddles in his driveway, watering his driveway through that. I'm like, we have to make real changes.
Well, and one of the quotes that Corky, when I've talked with Corky Evans a few times, a few other people, and he said, you know what, maybe we could, do we need to have another dam so that we can all have our electric toothbrushes? Do we really need electric toothbrushes? Something as simple as that. He kind of condensed it into that. And I agree with you. We need to change the way we live. We have everything and we're destroying everything. Come on.
Yeah.
We need to change.
Yeah, we do.
Whole scale.
When you look at the population, I saw this thing called Worldometer in this webpage, and apparently it's factually accurate. And it's crazy. It just shows literally in real time the amount of births, deaths, all that numbers, people, emails sent a day and stuff. But we're around 8 billion people now, and the number is just climbing like crazy. And then when you look at our rate of consumption and then the waste from that consumption, it's just not sustainable. Like all COVID to me, all the conspiracy behind, who cares?
People staying home made a big difference in the world, in ecology. If there's one good thing that it brought up, the oceans are healthier.
Yeah.
Pay attention, people. Was it that hard? I mean, yes, it's been hard. There's been some things that people have lost during this process, but there's also been some big gains.
Well, one of the biggest things was seeing, a picture of LA. So with the mountain, like there's no smog, like a week into it or something, and you're starting to see animals come back and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, but I just, like, you think of e-waste, like, I want a new phone. I'm like, but your one works awesome. They're like, yeah, but this one's the new one. I'm like, have you ever seen like the e-waste graveyards and stuff like that? And like, we have to start, I mean, I'm not one I don't mind commuting, stuff like that, but recreational, like motors for like motorboats and stuff, the amount of oil and gasoline they dump directly into the lake. Like if you swim as a swimmer, not just splashing around, like you swim by the boat launch, you can taste gasoline in the water.
Yeah.
So you have people that are like adamant, environmentalists, but then they'll go get in their boat. And it's like, well, like, come on. And the e-bikes, to me, I'm not a fan of those. I mean, I get it for some, for sure. But generally when I see people on perfectly flat roads, just coasting along, I'm like, they don't look at it as a motorcycle, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's just an electric motorcycle instead of a gasoline one.
Yeah.
And then you need all the, we get back to the dams, but then you look at the battery parts that apparently, the cobalt or something that comes from those crazy mines in Africa, where, we have it worse than them somehow in Nelson, and stuff like that. So people got to start making changes, but it seems like nobody cares until it happens to them, and they only care until it gets in the way of their fun. Nobody wants to change.
And that's with government. Well, nobody wants to change. And the other thing, too, is that if you have a government in place that legislates change, they don't get reelected, right? So a lot of times they don't, because people are ticked off at them saying, well, you've taken away, you're taking away something that I really like to have, and no, I don't want to do that. So but a lot of the times, the only way that real change can happen is if it's legislated. So,
well, that's what I look at. Like all the people that yell and scream on Facebook, like, I'm like, you got to put in the time. Change isn't about the short term; it's the long play, and you got to put in consistent time. Like, well, I don't have time or money. I'm like, well, you sure have time and money to go to the ski hill and you can drink beer, smoke smokes and spliffs, eat expensive food. Sure have time and money to go to the beach, drink beers, smoke smokes, eat snacks. Like, you just don't want to do it. You just want to yell for other people to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why, like I was saying, where even if you don't like any kind of government official, at least they've put their name in and take the abuse and the beatings. But all the gatherings and stuff, all they're meant to do is just put pressure on the decision makers, so become a decision maker.
Yeah.
But that's not gonna, in this world of instant gratification, you gotta do the long play.
Yeah.
And you gotta take the knocks off the chin, because it's a vicious thing, but people just think that they can tweet their way into infamy by doing nothing and telling other people what to do. And like I've been doing community stuff for over 20 years around here. And just wherever here, fundraising for this, volunteer for that, and things like it's the long thing. I mean, I'm trying to go global now. Like the whole think global, act local, to me is not a T-shirt. I mean, I've been doing the local thing for 20 years, so I'm gonna go after the global thing now.
That's great.
But we'll see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Well,
But
you're taking the first steps, and that's what counts.
Yeah,
You've made the commitment.
Well, I'm an all in or nothing person.
Yeah.
And so with that comes great success or spectacular failures.
Don't I know it?
And no, right back to that stupid thing I did with the whole Native thing. I'm not going to let that go.
Don't do that. Yeah, well, you learn.
Well, no, I also like a lot of people nowadays, it seems like they don't want to take ownership for when they screw up. They want to talk their way out of it so you can kind of see where they were coming from or something. And for me, I'm just like, no, when you screw up, it doesn't matter if it's large or personal, like recognize, like separate yourself, look at it objectively.
Yeah.
And then just kind of own it. And I'll apologize to anyone. Like I'll beg forgiveness if I feel like it's warranted. They're like, no, it's okay. I'm like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like that was shitty, stuff like that. And that seems to be something that is less of these days.
Yes.
But I'll take the beatings I deserve because, I don't know, I understand that there's literally in the history of humanity not one perfect person.
No, we're all,
And every single person, we don't get to the grave without owing and being owed major apologies, let alone the small ones.
Yeah.
So, and then we have this whole, world of cancel culture now where they'll destroy you over one sentence from 5 years ago, which is insane. Like, how do you even talk about forgiveness or the comeback or learning and making change? Like, one thing when I've been thinking about all this, the whole, stuff with the Native things, and like I have a whole, like I personally think the churches should be taxed and they should have to pay for the amount of time that the residential schools were put in place. And then the Fed should have to match that. So for like a century or something like that, the proper fair tax to the whatever community they're in, residential and commercial, and they should have to pay for that. And then to build up the community and stuff. But I also look at Nelson Mandela's way of, the past is the past. We have to, the only way we're going to go forward is together.
Yeah.
And so how do we work that? Like, to me, I would love to be able to talk to some Native elders. I think that one of the most important questions that I haven't really heard asked is to ask a group of them is, what would it take for you to finally be able to go to sleep at night and not feel like you have to fight? That you're finally at peace. What does that look like? And then you kind of see that answer and start working from there. And then, but everyone from Africa, Europe, Asia, we're here, we're together, people aren't going back, so we have to go forward. And then you look at the global community. I mean, Canada's way stronger as a unified nation and all the boundaries within it, rather than if we start breaking up. I mean, to me, the key to the breakup of Canada are the natives in Quebec. If they go in with the Quebecois for next referendum, that's it, chokes off the East Coast, Alberta's going to jump ship, BC will probably go alone, and then you have none of it, which doesn't even have roads, and then you have the Battle of the Northwest Passage, they're screwed. Like the thing you said about your 20-year-old self, something I think that's like completely heartbreaking for too many reasons, is the lady, the 27-year-old lady and MP from Nunavut that resigned. And
that broke my heart.
I think her 50-year-old self is going to be upset with herself, the 27-year-old kid, because instead of quitting and having the press conference, she should have had the press conference and stayed and just been right in their face. Because you think about it, like you're looking at two different things. It's like she's a native, so you're looking at residential schools, and she's a woman, which didn't used to exist. So now she's a native woman who's a federal rule maker. That, like, you just get right in their face. Like, I wish it wasn't too late for her to just go as an independent and be like, that's like, that was a bad call, because she was in that place, and that like hurt me in my heart to see.
Me too.
That's a real bummer.
That really bothered me too. I was really, being in politics and being a woman, it is more of a challenge. It is.
I don't doubt it.
I think there, when I was talking earlier about being criticized for my style, we went we went from a mayor, it was very much old school. It's mayor rules and it's top down. And well, there's a misconception people have. They think the mayor acts independently or has more power than the rest of council. Some people think that. No, the mayor is...
They're the tiebreaker, aren't they?
No.
Isn't it like, aren't there 7, like 6 councils and the mayor?
There's the 6 councillors and the mayor, but the mayor always has a vote.
Yeah.
It's not just a tiebreaker. And the mayor is part of council. The mayor's vote doesn't have any more weight than anybody else's vote.
That's what I mean. There's the 6th and then the 7th.
Yeah. But in terms of the mayor having, extra powers or whatever, usually the mayor is the spokesperson for council. That, that's the way that works. But as far as having any special powers or anything, the mayor doesn't have that. But there are some people who operate like they do. And when I took the chair, I made a promise to council that all of us would have a voice, all of us would be heard, and that, if I was, of course, the press would call me because I'm the mayor, and I would make comment, but I did not. I shared information with my council as well. When I had a meeting, when people wanted to talk to the mayor, whatever, I would always report back to council. That didn't always happen previously.
Right.
Because that's an old style of leadership, right? Or I don't even call that leadership. And I think that the way that I operated in a more collaborative fashion was seen by some people to be a weak style. It's not a weak style. It's a challenge.
Be inclusive?
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, you're elected to lead, but without the input.
Well,
I think of the barite crushing plant. Do you remember that whole thing where 90+% were against it, and the mayor's like, "So what? You voted me in. Deal with it."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "You can't do that, man."
No, you can't do that. and I think sometimes, like, it doesn't matter if you're a mayor or if you're part of a family or whatever. Sometimes you just say, I'm tired of talking to all you people. Can't something just go my way for a change? Can't you just listen and do it this way? But if you believe that people are valuable, if you believe that what people think and what they have to contribute is valuable, then you take that into consideration. And I truly believe, and I know that that's the way the best decisions are made. You have to listen to others, and there are always aspects of an issue that you may not have considered, but that person has. And so you need to bring all of that together to make the best decisions possible. That's the way I always operated. And was it hard sometimes? Yeah, it was really hard. Like, we had some real, the whole cannabis thing. Oh my good grief. That was just unbelievable. Again, Nelson, we did a few things.
Recession-proof town?
No, jeez. It was just, it was so ridiculous. My wish, if I would have had my way personally, we wouldn't even have been discussing it. We would have been saying to people, you wait until the feds legalize it. We're not going to make up our own rules here. And all this drama about people saying, how am I going to get my medical marijuana? The way you've always been getting it. Yeah. There's never been an issue in Nelson for people to get their marijuana, as far as I know. And at that point, nationally, police officers knew that it was probably going to be legalized, right?
Oh, you could see it coming. That was
they weren't going after people for possession of marijuana. Right. So it wasn't like a big deal anymore, right? The big deal was making the rules around how we were going to do that. And that's not the role of local government. We spent tons of time on that when there were so many other things that we should have been doing. Right. And it was all based on the pressure of a few shop owners that wanted to open up early, right? So anyway, we had all of that, and then suddenly it was passed. We were gonna say, yes, it's all good. And then we had to make all these rules about where it could be, how it could be, could it be close, So Nelson was a pioneer in creating a lot of that, a lot of the rules that were adopted in a broader way when it did become legal by other communities. But we kind of broke ground on that. If you were to ask me now about the marijuana bylaw, I would say bring it back to the table. At that time, we put a cap on how many stores there should be.
What, there's like 3 now,
I
or
think
4?
there's 4 now. I think we said, yeah, and we put a cap on it because there was this fear in the community that so people would run amok. We'd have nothing but downtown but pot stores, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think that would happen. But if it did, I mean, they'd knock each other out because, I mean, maybe they'd bring the prices down too, who knows. But I think I don't think that should be in effect now. It's legal now. Other communities, I don't believe, have a cap. There's still rules around where the stores can be, sort of like, liquor stores and everything. But in terms of putting a cap on the number, I think that should be taken off. I think what we did was inadvertently give a few people the entire market for marijuana.
Oh, right.
And I don't think that's right. That's not right either. So that certainly wasn't an intention of the bylaw. But now that it's all legal and the feds are regulating it, there's no need for that in that bylaw.
Yeah, well, hindsight,
Yeah.
100%.
No kidding.
Well,
yeah.
You were, weren't you were sitting mayor when all the Airbnb stuff was happening.
Oh, that was another thing we broke ground on.
That got pretty intense. I mean, it's
very
still
intense.
a very divided thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of effects from that.
Yeah, it is a very divisive thing. And we had some really thoughtful conversations with people in the community and business owners, and we had lots of interaction around what was the best way. So council decided, should we ban it altogether? Well, no, they didn't want to do that. Should there be some rules around it? Yeah. So that's what we came up with. And it was in collaboration with the community. What I find alarming is that Airbnbs in cities like Paris,
yeah,
they've had to really, I think they've banned it now within certain districts in the center of Paris. You can't have an Airbnb anymore because it was a wasteland. Everybody that lived there was Airbnb-ing, and they take off out of the city, and then the city is dead, right? So you can't have that. That's everything. I think when we were working together, part of my philosophy around community is make sure things are in balance. If something becomes totally unbalanced, it's not effective, and it's not good for people, and it's not good for the environment, it's not good for the community.
Sounds like people and the planet.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's very true.
Well, no, I just look at the laws of nature, like when a species population gets too much, disease sets in and thins itself out, or it just eats out the food and it rights itself. But we don't really do that, and we don't think that applies to us, the whole thing, man and nature. I'm like, no, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
We're all just we're beings living on the earth, that it was here before us, it'll be here after us. So
yeah, we're no better or worse than we're definitely worse. But
well, we have the potential to be infinitely amazing.
Yeah, we
do.
But
most of what we use our intelligence for is to figure out how to be lazier and stupider. How everything can just do it for us. The push button life, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw a thing where it was, they were cloning, they found some buried, with the glaciers now receding and melting off, they're finding all these prehistoric, parasites and stuff, and let's clone this. And there's literally entire film franchises of why that's a bad idea.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They still do it. And it's that whole, Jurassic Park, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Mm-hmm. And no,
it's true.
We just don't learn, but we just have this intelligent possibility that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, when we talked about Nelson being progressive,
no, it says it is.
But truly, there are some really progressive people here. I just love that D-Pace is here.
Sorry?
D-Pace, the nuclear physicist that lives here, Morgan Donnell.
Oh.
I interviewed him, and he was part of the. He grew up here and he wanted to live here. But he has this company called DPACE, and they were part of, for example, developing. The radioactive. What do you call them? Pills or whatever that people swallow, and then they trace what's going on in your system.
Oh, for bone scans. Yeah, I've had that. I've even had the radioactive milkshakes.
That was developed
the isotopes
here.
Or whatever.
Yeah, that was developed here.
Oh,
and
really?
he's always working. Like I interviewed him once when I was a host on Nelson Before 9 on Kootenai Co-op Radio.
Yeah, what years was that?
Oh gosh, it's a long time ago. It was before. It was. In the early 2000s, like, and I was on for quite a few years.
Like before council type
Yeah,
thing?
before council.
Right.
Yeah, and I loved interviewing these people, but I'll never forget the interview with Morgan. He's very passionate about what he does, and we started off with some of these inventions and stuff that he had been involved in, and then he started to talk, and he totally lost me. Because he's talking in language that I'm not familiar with, right?
Right.
So I had to keep bringing him back, and he was so good. He was so patient. I'd say, "Just a minute, I'm not quite getting what you're talking about there." And he was so good at getting back to me about oh, okay, and bring it together. So having somebody like him that wants to live in town, having Greg Malpass, who had a successful company and wants to bring that back to Nelson. Having people on council or on boards or on business community who are forward-thinking, who are community-minded people. We still have some of that. I think there's still lots of people around here that are like that. But what I don't want us to lose is that compassion that we have for each other. I always saw Nelson as a really compassionate community.
I used to. I've only been here, 22, what year is it? 22 and a bit years. Well, every time I say that, people are like, well, I've been here since the 80s. I'm like, is everything a competition? Like, come on. So I've seen some...
Are people funny? It's like, really? You just said that?
Yeah, they just want to fight. I'm like... But I've been here enough. I've seen some stuff.
Yeah,
and
you've seen the community change too.
I've seen it change a lot, but I also get involved. Like I don't just sit around and watch. Like I put my ass on the line, my name, my money, my body, my health, all of it, and stuff like that. So, but I find that the loudest people are the most divisive. Yeah. And other people just can't be bothered. They're just like, don't comment, don't whatever. So, thankfully, the world, it's way more good people than bad people. Yeah. But the bad ones are willing to do what the good ones aren't. That's why they can float to the top and stay there, because they will crush you and bury you.
Oh yeah.
And stuff.
It's win at all costs.
Yeah, and I don't like that. I like even looking at business and stuff, like when, working and stuff in town and things, that I looked at it as it's not success at all costs, it's at the right cost. Yeah. And then in competition with other businesses, it's like you don't do stuff against them, you kind of do better business by providing a better product and service. Yeah. In that way, instead of just getting all sleazy the way some people get. Yeah. But Nelson, it's changed a lot. But I mean, anytime I leave here, I'm like, I just want to go home. It's awesome. Like, it's like the best place on the planet. Yeah. I mean, Canada is, as much as people jump all over it, it's consistently in the top 3 of the world, best places to live. And it's that for a reason. You bet. I mean, not perfect. No country is, but for what it is, it's amazing. And then this specific place in Canada, like I said, I don't like saying about how awesome it is, because there's enough people here. I want people to find it naturally, like I did by accident. Yeah. Not like big freaking banners of like, everybody come here. It's like, no, just find it by mistake.
I know. I think what's going to be really interesting is when when we lift a lot of these restrictions, when the country gets back to having gatherings again, where people can really come together in crowds, like for example, like when we had the market fests, none of that happened for the last 2 years, right? And people would come downtown and hang out and check out the booths and visit with each other, and there's so and so, and what, like those are wonderful. And I think that and that's when some of those events, that's when I really saw the diversity of our community. Like everybody's out on that street and enjoying the evening, having a good time, dancing, doing whatever they're doing, purchasing stuff, eating. And I would look around and think, it really is pretty incredible, the diversity of people who are living here now.
Oh, it's amazing.
And when you were talking earlier about many of the people that you worked with in the service industry are coming from India and East Asia and stuff, that's changing the face of our community too.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I make fun of them though. I think they're stupid because not them personally. I'm like, you literally flew halfway across the world and went to school to take this job. Are you crazy? When we're like losing our minds over being treated like crap from the public.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's a method to their madness because they're not going to stay in those jobs forever. They're here to become Canadian citizens. That's what's.
Oh no, I watch a lot of my friends, like what they're going through. Like they go through a lot to become a citizen and get their residency. Like it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, zillions of forms. It doesn't just happen, and I've watched countless friends do that. But I just mean the hotel industry sucks. You get paid like crap. They as a like a 5-day, like it's totally illegal. A 5-day-a-week worker, okay, you have to come in 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
Okay, it's called a pass on because you have to see what the previous shifts dealt with. This room needs this whatever. This has been a problem room, but you don't get paid for it. So if you work 5 days a week for the year, those 10 minutes equals 50 minutes a week that you're giving up for free, and it works out to over 43 hours a year.
Yeah.
So hotels are taking 1 week for free of your life every year that they refuse to pay you for, and they pay you like garbage, and then you get treated like garbage from the public. That's just, in the past 10 years, they've just gotten worse and worse and worse.
It's like the airline industry. What is that?
And like I've actually developed an awesome skill that my bosses were they enjoyed watching, because some of them did, is that I learned to, because you can't freak out. I mean,
no, you can't.
Like
that just makes it
you
worse.
Want to. Well, there's some times where I have enough is enough. I had these 3 guys that were checking in, a woman, she had like MS or something, or Parkinson's or something. So she just checked in and then left, came back down. These 3 guys were here, a work crew, and they're just blocking off the entrance. She can't get around them. And she was pretty, so they're just making comments and stuff. And I'm just like, she doesn't need to, like, just shut up. But then when she leaves and then comes back and goes through again, then they this one of them starts making fun of her. They think that she's drunk and staggering because she's slurring her speech because she's got like MS or something. And they literally start making fun of her. And I'm just like, what? Wait a minute, what did you just say? And he said it, and I just freaking came unglued. And I'm like, I will not tolerate that kind of crap. Like I got fired from one of the hotels in town for standing up for a pregnant girl not being treated well, and I'd do it again. Like I don't care. Like the right things, I don't care about circumstance or consequence when it's doing the right thing. Most people around here, they just go home and yell on Facebook and say, well, I couldn't do anything in time because you don't know what's going to happen. I'm like, I don't care.
Act in the moment.
I'm not that guy. I'm like, I think there's 2 people you stand up for no matter what if they're being wronged. Circumstance, consequence doesn't matter. It's little children and pregnant women. You just do that. So I've done that, and I lost my job. I don't care. It got back to her. I saw her months later. She thanked me for it and all that stuff. But the hotel, like the industry, you get paid horribly. It's hard to live in this town working Like it's a tourism town.
Yeah.
Hospitality industry is dominant here, but it's hard. Like you just get paid terrible, and then you get treated terrible from the public.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's 10 years of doing that has made me cynical and angry.
Aw.
And so, I mean, I don't do it anymore. I'm full-time invested into doing all of this, trying to make it work and stuff. But like you kind of, as a like food and beverage server, frontline hotel or retail, you see the truth about people that you don't necessarily think is the way things are.
Yeah.
And it gets tough.
People don't. Why wouldn't people realize that the person that's across the desk from you or serving you your beer or your meal, you don't think that they are observing you, that they don't see what kind of an individual you are? Like, I don't get that either.
Well, I had one, this is kind of funny. I was coming right unglued about, I had to deal with a guest that was beyond unreasonable, and it was like, you've already given them 7 chances type thing. So I come into this little tiny office and I'm just losing my mind. And then one of the managers of one of the other businesses in the building, she's like, oh, come on, it's not that bad. And I'm like, whatever. Don't even try to tell me at least twice a night you're not fighting with everything you have not to throw hot coffee in someone's face.
Yeah.
And then she just laughed. She's like, okay, yeah, that's a good point. Carry on.
My daughter worked before she was earning money to go back to school, and she worked at that time it was called, it's part of the Prestige now, it's the one on Nelson Avenue.
The Viking?
The Viking.
Yeah, I worked there.
Yeah, she managed that place for a Korean family bought it, I believe, yeah. And before she went back to school, she worked there for a good year, and they hated to let her go. But some of the stories she would come home with, it was awful, and the way people trashed rooms too.
Yeah.
Like what on earth?
No, like the nicest people that are checking in.
Yeah.
And then when they check out, you see the room, and you're like, seriously? Like, it's just disgusting and repulsive. So you charge them a deep clean fee, and then they come unglued and stuff.
Oh,
and,
well.
You know, they'll claim discrimination when you're throwing them out for, because it's basically, there's a 3-strike policy, So it's like you get your first warning. And then if you're disturbing, because anyone, sound can get away from you.
Yeah, you don't
So you go up there, and then you explain to them, okay, we've had some noise complaints. Can you keep it down? Just so you know, if we have to come back again the second time, then you're going to have to you have to pay for the room, the complainant room. Mm-hmm. And then if we have to come back a third time, there's no warning. We come back with the police, and you're out, and you still have to pay for their room and your room.
Yeah.
Because we can't the police aren't going to keep coming.
No.
So once they come, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's basically, that's the kind of uniform 3-strike policy. I mean, because when we used to do Grateful Dead tour, we'd cram 20 people in a room and we'd be going for it full tilt.
Yeah.
But when the knock on the door came, I was the guy, when we're totally bent out of shape, I'd go to the door, smooth them over and be like, okay, it's either we got to get out or we shut up and kind of be respectful. But it was way more respectful. Like, the worst is our hockey teams. There's almost nothing worse than them, and hotels want to ban them. Because now it's like, years ago when I worked at the Prestige, the kids were playing with pucks in the hall, shooting at the housekeeping carts. And so shooting pucks at them. So then the parents got mad at us for saying something. So I'm like, what? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, when I played hockey, like, we were little bastards. All of us were. And so...
And you had coaches and parents that just kept on top of you?
If our parents caught us, it was the end of us. But but if the hotel got in touch with our parents, it was death. We were pulled out of the tournament. We're getting yelled at all the way home. Yeah. And then we got to go to our room for the night, hungry or not, doesn't matter. And then they're going to use the night to think about what our actual punishment is. Yeah. It's not this whole crap of the parents
My
are going to
kid's
get
done nothing wrong.
Yeah, they rent the whole hotel so they can do whatever they want. We're like, no, it's our business, and like it's just brutal. Like, and the parents
Once
are
again, this
worse
sense
than
of
the kids.
entitlement, hey?
Yeah, it's I see this thing a lot. This wordy picture meme thing of, you know, Generation X, the last great generation before all these pansies took over. I'm like, no, we're actually the worst ones because we raised them. and then they immediately start being like, not my kids are the best.
All my kids are the best, yeah.
Of course. But no, it's our generation of parents now, the hockey parents, that are, you know, they act like the hotel's a babysitter, and then they just get hammered. And then they'll go to wrong rooms and stuff like that, and you just get yelled at. And so hotels are like,
we're done with you.
We just hate hot, but it's like they're taking up 12 rooms. You're like, oh. But it's a total difference.
Like if you're on a hockey team, it's like you get a surcharge on the room automatically. Honestly, that's terrible.
I just don't get where it went from, like, it's the same thing of no fail policies in school and stuff. You know, I'm like, no, like, you don't, that's not right. That doesn't teach you anything. What that does to kids when they get out of school is that when their boss says this is what you got to do, and they're like, no, I can't. Like, I see them because 80% of who I work with are 18 to 25-year-olds.
Right.
And they, like, in the more recent years, they're so crippled by anxiety, they can't deal with busy, they can't deal with confrontation and stuff and because it's the whole, you get prizes for last place. If I forget my homework, my parents will bring it to me at school. They're not going to fail me. Yeah. So then they come out and it's not that, and the world's all conflict, and they just, the world is the world. They just implode. And it's just a crazy, crazy thing. And then on top of that, you get paid like crap in a real hard cost of living. Like, being in the hospitality industry in a place like this is tough. And I mean, it should be great, but I mean, what shouldn't be great, really?
Yeah, and you can't afford to live in the community. That to me is really, that's wrong.
Yeah, but I don't pretend to have any answers. Too many people, like, they act like they have answers, because I see it sometimes. Some things, like a very complex thing, might seem simple, but it's not. And a simple thing might be very complex, and then where do you find in the middle and stuff? And then everyone's just fighting with each other, and you can't. I mean, you have to work with each other. Diversity is awesome, because without diversity and ideas and stuff, then you're going into one of those sci-fi movies where everyone's wearing gray and saying the same crap, and then one person's like, hey, wait a minute, like, there's color out there. Yeah. Like, we need that flavor in life. Yeah. And I don't know, everybody just wants everyone, you have to be exactly with my thing or you should be destroyed. And that's the new mentality. That's just insane.
And to be so afraid of somebody who disagrees with your point of view, or to feel that everybody needs to think the same, I think it's a very immature way to live in the world.
Very selfish.
Yeah, and selfish, and I think that's one of the key issues now with this argument between the vaccinated and unvaccinated. I'm seeing people become very self-righteous.
Oh, good God, yeah.
And I think that's wrong. For example, like we were talking earlier, there are people who cannot get vaccinated that for good reason. And they're not faking it, they're not, and they're being careful and they're being responsible, but to kind of lord it over them, or say that I'm better, or I'm doing the right thing and you're doing the wrong thing. What happened to compassion? What happened to understanding? What happened to, Well,
that's what I meant about this town kind of going off the rails with it. Like, it was way more compassionate before, and now COVID has just, to me, shown the true colors of this place.
Well, I think it's happening in every community, to tell you.
Well, yeah, for sure.
I think that this whole, situations like this bring out the best and worst in people. Like, we know that whenever there's a crisis, there are people who rise above it and do their best, and then there's others that just implode and lash out. It's everybody's fault. Why me? And I see that on other issues as well. It's like we need to evolve. I think if COVID is teaching us anything, we need to evolve as a race of people.
Well, we think we are. A lot of people think they are.
Yeah.
By speaking for, they just speak the truth, but it's only the truth as they know it. It's like the media. It's like the media doesn't care about the story, they care about their story.
Yeah.
And so everyone's just too into their own thing. And I mean, there's 8 billion people. We're not all going to be alike, and if we were, it'd suck.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, and we'd be stunted in ideas and growth and all that stuff. And
Oh, like, for example, when we were talking about making things better and improving things, we talked about consumption.
Yeah.
I'm totally impressed with what Sweden's done in terms of not allowing corporations to make things that you just throw away. They're legislating that you must be able to, people must be able to repair the things that they have, like, so that they don't become obsolete, but you be able to repair it and reuse it or whatever. And we need to bring that legislation here as well. Like, we cannot continue to operate in the ways that we have. We cannot continue to be a throwaway culture. It's ridiculous.
Goodness, no.
So, I think there's good things that are happening in the world. We just need to.
Well, there's pockets of good things. Iceland's doing good things, like financially and all that stuff, but we're just not learning from each other the way we should, because it's like, they just do their thing, we're doing our thing.
And it's also pressure. It's political pressure, because corporations aren't willing to. Well, this is good for them, right?
Yeah.
So it would be better if they'd probably make more money if they made things fixable.
Yeah, in ways. Like, I don't know, like I remember getting I had an old van. I mean, all my vehicles are old, but one of them, when I had to get the rad fixed, he pulls out my old one, and it's like copper and galvanized metal or something. And the new one's just like crap freaking plastic that I'm like, that's just meant to fall apart. That's literally how it was built, man.
Of course it is, yeah.
Yeah, I miss, it just doesn't seem like there's integrity. It's that whole thing, success at all costs versus the right costs.
Yeah, Val and I were talking about the same thing. She came home from Lebanon, and what she's doing now, this is what she did before she came to Nelson. She coordinates, she works with a country, it's the Norwegian, NPA, Norwegian People's Aid, I think. It's a non-profit organization out of Norway, and they help people coordinate landmine removal out of their countries. So Val worked for them for years before she came to Nelson. And then she was taking a break, and she and her husband decided that they would take a break from this work, and that they would settle down for a few years and raise their kids and do that. So that's how she came to Nelson. And again, somebody that was driving around looking for a place to be, and there was a friend that lived here, and they checked it out and said, well, this is where we want to be. So once she finished work on council, she reapplied, and she was accepted again back. They were glad to have her back, and she's now working in Lebanon. And she was talking to me about what's happening there. And I don't know if you're aware, but you probably are. Remember there was that huge explosion in Beirut, and there was a ship
recently,
that exploded.
Like
just
a year
recently.
ago or something. Yeah.
Well, that on top of everything else, the government has imploded. The government is very corrupt, and so it's kind of imploded. Their major port has blown up. There's huge efforts to rebuild, but that's going to take years. It's going to take a long, long time. And in the meantime, Valerie's working with, helping coordinate. She works with local, the national military, and they make these teams up, and they train these teams, and they do this work. And she said that these jobs are so precious to the people there because, of course, inflation has hit.
Right.
And these people they have good jobs, and they're usually supporting their entire families, extended families, right?
Right.
And right now there's gasoline shortages. So what that's meaning is that supply chains for food, for everything, are disrupted.
Right.
It's just a mess over there. So these people are trying to carry on day to day and live their lives. And all of these terrible conditions. Oh, and there's 1,400 new COVID cases per day right now.
Wow.
Yeah. And we're sitting here whining in Canada about having to stay home or put a mask on or my God, I think if anything, what travel should teach us is how great we have it here.
Yeah.
And how much we have to give and how much we need to appreciate each other and our country and what we have. Or even what's happening in Afghanistan right now.
I don't know anything of that. I just heard something's kicking off. It just seems like since the 80s, Lebanon, like you hear about Beirut all the time, and Afghanistan, they've just been a mess the whole time.
Yeah.
Beyond my comprehension.
Well, the United States, after 20 years,
has they pulled out.
After 20 years, and things are just imploding again. How sad. If you were in the military, and I was listening to an interview with a few of our military people who've served there, and their goal was to help people, lift people as well. Like it was to protect them, but also it was about education of women. It was about a whole lot of things, and they're just heartbroken to see all of that.
Yeah, my like of those twins I was telling you about. One of them, Justin, he actually was on CBC a few years ago when he was in, I think, Bosnia in like 93 or 94.
Oh, yeah, that was rough.
Yeah, so he befriended this little kid, and then he reconnected with him later as an adult.
How wonderful.
However many, not too many years ago. And then I think he went back over there and stuff to see them and did all this stuff, and then it got turned into a national news story and stuff. But,
that's very cool.
But so when he was there, you see him, there's a picture of him with this little kid. I might be able to find it here on my thing. And then, although you wouldn't be able to see it. But so he, like I said, he wants to help. Like there are those kind of people where you have all these people that are so divisive, and then you have the bad weeds in the police that do all so the whole department takes a rap and stuff, and then you have these good guys that want to do good, and it almost like I feel bad for them in ways because of it's like they're just fighting this impossible battle of everyone's against the good ones because of the few bad ones.
Yeah.
And then that gets pretty tough to do all that. But anyways, I'm kind of losing thought trying to find this, so I'm giving up.
That's all right.
I can show it to you after.
Yeah.
But they're just, when you're talking about soldiers over there when they're talking about the human part of it, not the war, but the human within the war and stuff, and how they're actually devastated on top of having to deal with the war end of it. Like that's a very real thing. Like I had, when I was at the Best Western, because I wasn't there that long, but in the morning, around 5 a.m. One morning, there was a guy that just came down and just hung out in the lobby. And it was one of the most fascinating conversations I've ever had. The guy was in the NSA intelligence. He said he did it backwards because 20 years later was a Marine. He's like, usually you start as a Marine and then you'll get to intelligence. But he was the guy that you would see in like spy movies that was in like on the ground in the Mideast and given the intelligence for the SEALs and the Marines to go do their thing. Like he was that guy.
Yeah.
And then he was down in Texas or something training new recruits and stuff. And then So he got into stuff about this whole, like, the wokeness or whatever you want to call it for the military. He's like, that doesn't exist over there. You know, this whole thing, because he was talking about this one woman. He said she was 5 feet tall, 5 feet wide. And she wouldn't take orders. So they're in the military, that it's all about you take orders or you're...
That's how it's...
Yeah, so she wouldn't do any of it, and she just wouldn't shut up. And then, and because, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but it's the equalization of women. I can do whatever. You can't tell me what to do as a man. Like, that's what he was saying. Yeah. And he's like, this has nothing to do with this. This is the military. Okay, and you got to understand where you're going. They don't care. And as a woman, they respect you even less. You have like 10-year-old kids that just have darkness in their eyes because they have AK-47s that are dragging in the dirt because they're too small to carry them. They got cigarettes, and it's all about projection of power and stuff like that. So she wouldn't stop. And then he said, okay, there was this other guy who was like 6'5", 250 pounds, an ex-college football player. So he orders him in the middle, orders her in the middle, and then he orders her to take him down. And she refused to. And he's like, you don't understand. I'm not asking you. This is the military.
Yeah.
This is an order, a direct order. And so she wouldn't. And then he's finally like getting through to her that this is the military and you can be court-martialed.
So there you go.
So put him down. And then he said she finally got what he was saying. And then he looked at the guy and he's like, so did you feel threatened? And he's like, no. And then, okay, back in line. But he talked about, like, an RPG bounced off a rock right beside his head, and then it went up and exploded right above him, and then he got the bends like you do in scuba diving.
Of course.
Naturally, and his concussion was so bad. But he's saying, like, the way I still hate the word, but the way the wokeness has come into the military, I'm like, when you're going over, it's all fine when you're in Canada and America, but when you're going to places that have literally zero respect for that, you have to be trained in a different manner.
Yep.
And then, but it was like the most fascinating thing. So guys like that, I love talking to them. And then, so these twin brothers, Jason and Justin Fry, who I've known since mid-'80s, still can't tell them apart. And I have no clue.
Well, they must have fun with that.
Well, no, I gave them full license to just come at me for life because I earned it. And I can't even trust them to be the right person just because they could mess with me.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to do one with the two of them. And then Justin, his daughter, I'm going to do one with him and her because she's like a full tilt. I think she's like 18, maybe 19 now, but fitness.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to do a big fitness thing with them and stuff. But like I saw Justin, he in 2015, I think it was 2014 it might have happened. I saw him in 2015, but he was off duty and at a concert and some guy was beating up his girlfriend.
Oh,
I think this is kind of what it was. So he ended up, he's like, well,
that's not right.
Jumping into that. And then she ends up smashing him in the face with a beer bottle, which was like the craziest. It's just insane. Anyway, so when I was back there, I wanted to just bring him some beers or something. So I'm like, yeah, but he'll just drink those and whatever in a week or days or whatever, and then that's that. So I'm like, I want to do something else. So I don't even know how I came up with this, but I got him a plaque. And I just go into a trophy store. I'm like, hey, I want to get what's the deal with making a plaque and how long does it take? So like, well, it depends on what you want. They're like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. I just got an awesome friend who kicks ass and I want to make a plaque for him. And I wanted to get him beers, but those don't last. So like, well, what do you want it to say? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't really think about it. How about, Swoopin' Awesome Good Guy Award. So I made him a plaque and then we went out for breakfast and I gave it to him. It's totally hilarious. But in just talking with him, we were talking about just policing and how he likes to, like, he's a true good one. You know, the guy that everybody needs to be like in the police department, and the guy that anyone in the community wants to interact with. Because a big problem with police is people, they make you feel like you've done something wrong when you're just standing at a red light waiting to cross the street. You know, the whole intimidation thing. But you kind of got to understand that for them, anything can kick off at any time, so they got to be kind of amped up that way. But the way these guys are, these two brothers, it's like just a genuine embracing thing, and they have the real human side. That's totally wonderful. Down, and then into just they just want to help.
I've met officers like that too, and I have such great respect for them. I had a lot of respect for Paul Burkhart in the way that he was the police chief in our community.
How long was he the chief for?
Paul became chief. He was on the police force for a long time. Right. He came up through the ranks here in Nelson. But he became chief when 2019, in 2019, and he just retired last year, so not too long. Oh,
so just a couple of years as chief, or a year.
He really embraced community policing in a way that where really listened to people, really wanted to make sure that the Nelson City Police were not seen as apart from community, but a part of community. So one of the things he did many things, but there was Nelson Pride Parade coming up. And there were a couple of high school girls who decided to paint the rainbow sidewalk, you know, the one that's outside the library and police station? But they didn't get permission to do it, and they thought they wouldn't get permission, so they just did it at night, and they got caught. And
well,
they got arrested,
right there.
And the cops caught them, right?
Oh, they arrested them?
Well, I don't know if they arrested them, but they caught them.
Right. Gave them the talking to.
It's vandalism if you're doing, you know, stuff like that.
Oh, come on.
So, what Paul did was he came to me and he said, we are going to, these girls are going to ask, write a letter to council, and they're going to apologize for doing this in this way, and they're going to ask for permission to paint the sidewalk. And I said, that's perfect, that's great. So they did, they appeared at council, and it was a good thing, like they weren't ashamed, or we didn't make them feel terrible about themselves or whatever.
Yeah, a couple deadbeats coming in.
Not at all, and it was great. And we talked about Pride Parade, and we talked about why, you know, I asked them why it was important to them, and, you know, it was a good conversation. And then the council, of course, I wrote them a letter, and as the mayor, and saying, yes, you have permission, and thanks for, you know, it's great that you care about this issue, and this is good. We need this in our community, something to that effect. And then Paul went out with another officer, and he helped them paint the sidewalk.
Oh, sweet. Because it's an annual thing now, isn't it?
It is an annual thing. And the police help paint it every year. And to me, that speaks volumes about what community policing is about. It could have gone really badly. Like, these kids could have been charged with vandalism and, you know, defacing public property and all this other crap. But the message that they got from their community and from police is, you don't have to be clandestine about this. You can come forward and speak to your council, speak to the police and say, we want to do this and this is why, and see what happens. And then, you know. It
seems like the opposite way to have done it, the way they did it. Like, I would have asked first, like, hey, we want to do this.
They thought they wouldn't get permission, right? They
then you paint it. Say, it wasn't me, I was out of town, here's my alibi.
Yeah, so that was just one example. And he worked really hard to work with various community groups. Like, we worked as a good team, he and I.
Right.
And I appreciated his style. Especially in a small town police force.
Well, what's the difference with the Nelson, dealing with the Nelson police and the RCMP?
The Nelson City Police are 100% paid for by the taxpayer.
But I just mean personally to deal with.
Oh, to deal with them. Now, the RCMP, I didn't have too many dealings with because their jurisdiction is outside the city.
Okay. But I've seen them pull over people in the city.
Exactly, they can, but they are their headquarters is here.
Yeah.
But they patrol outside the city normally.
Yeah, pretty much to Balfour, the junction.
Yeah, they've got a big territory
Yeah.
to do. Larger than Balfour. I forget how big their territory is. And the RCMP officers or senior officers that I dealt with, Tom Roy was in charge when I was mayor, and they were great. They had a good It wasn't always this way. In the past, there was rivalry between the Nelson City Police and RCMP.
Yeah, I was just going to ask how they get along.
They get along much better now, and it's all due to leadership style. It's all due to how you communicate. It's all due to, there was this fear that the RCMP were going to take over the city of Nelson, and so the chief of the day would not like that, and there would be this rivalry between the two factions, which is silly. At this point in time, I would say the relationship is good. And we have, I think it's 3 officers who are seconded to the RCMP, meaning that they provide all their pay and RCMP training, but we hire, they are Nelson City police officers, but they are on highway patrol with RCMP. And that was a deal. That was an agreement that was struck some time ago, at least 8 years ago, and before I was mayor. And it's a nice relationship. So yeah, it's much better now than it has been at times in the past.
No, that's great. It's
Yeah.
did you, because you were council when that was happening, or just before?
When they were seconded?
Yeah, when that started.
Yeah, well, I was on council. Yeah.
Yeah. So was there kind of an incident that kind of pushed it to happen, or it just kind of happened naturally, or?
I'm not
it's
quite sure how that came about, because I wasn't on the police board at that time, and it wasn't a discussion at council. It would have been a discussion with police board members and RCMP and police chief and mayor probably at that time, who was the chair. And I think it was just it was to the benefit of both sides, because we kind of have officers in reserve, and they could switch out. One of the things about serving in a small town police force is that although it has its benefits, you're living and working in the community, and it's not high crime like it is in Vancouver. Yes, we do have crime, but it's not like we're working downtown East Side or whatever. But working with the RCMP can expand your experience as an officer as well.
Right.
And you have access to other training, and so it's kind of a perk for an officer that wants to do that. And they're usually there for a couple of years, and then they rotate out.
Just back into just strictly Nelson, but now they know how they work and all that stuff.
And I think what's really good is that by doing that secondment, there's personal relationships that are built between officers from RCMP and Nelson City. They get to know each other as officers and as people.
That counts for everything.
And it really, there's a shortage of officers, as we know right now with RCMP, and it's important that they work together. They used to be so polarized that they really weren't even working together. It's sort of like some local governments. It doesn't make sense to me that there's rivalry between communities or between mayors or whatever. That's happened in the past. It's really
you see that all the time.
Yeah, it's important that we get along and that we work together for the common good.
Yeah.
So I see that as the same kind of thing between the RCMP and municipal police forces. I think it's really important.
No, that's just common sense. To do it otherwise is just nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's ego.
Oh, yeah.
It's ego.
Stupid ego. Yeah. That thing's been the death of a lot of the world.
Yeah, it has, yeah.
Okay, do you want to wrap it up? We've been talking for a while here.
We have been. What time is it?
It is 20 after 5.
Oh
so
my gosh, we've been at this for
about 3 hours.
Oh yeah, it's time to wrap up. Oh yeah.
All right, well.
You got to go swimming.
No, I'm done with that for a while. I know I can crush it. Well, I'm just going to play a stop in a second.
Okay.
I'm going to just put you on one more time. Just give me a second here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a thing of doing it myself. So, just want to say thanks. That was awesome. We talked about a lot of stuff.
We did talk about a lot of things.
I didn't think that would weave and bob that much.
Thanks for sharing your stories with me too. I really enjoyed hearing your stories.
Yeah,
I really did.
Yeah,
it was great.
Yeah, that was fun. I wanted to talk to you about fishing and stuff, but we're 3 hours in, so we got to wrap it up.
Well, we'll have to do another one some other time.
Yeah, well, I'll have more stories at that point.
You know what? Fun. When you come back and when you have more stories, I'll probably have more stories too. That I'm not finished yet. I'm ready for other things too now.
Well, yeah, that's also part 2 is what are you doing now? I mean, you're fishing, but
I was fishing. I went fishing, salmon fishing with my family and on the ocean. I'd never been on the ocean before. I loved it for fishing, and we got some salmon. During COVID, I think like most people, I hunkered down and pulled in and have been community-based, but I'm ready for some new things now. One of the things that I had spoken about, but I haven't completed yet, was that I had thought about applying for the Senate.
Oh.
Yeah, and I would like to do that.
How does that all work?
Well, you apply, and it's an open process. Anyone can apply.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh well, not all are chosen. Obviously.
No, I thought that they just picked who they were. I guess they do, or
they
out of the application.
It used to be patronage appointments, but that changed. I believe it was the Liberal government that said we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to have an independent committee, and that's going to choose candidates for Senate. And now it's a long shot. That's sort of like when you were saying you have these big goals for yourself. I was thinking, I would like to be a part of making good legislation in our country. I see so many issues coming up in the future, and if there's anything that working at local government level gave me, it was the ability to read reams of material, to also think about issues in different ways, and to be connected to people. Just in my role on council and as mayor, I made a lot of connections provincially and nationally, and I think that's really important. And Canada it's a precious country. We need, when we talk about the Senate and sober second thought on legislation that comes in around environment, around technology, around any of those things, it's important that we do the right thing. So I thought that would be interesting work, and I think I have some things to offer there. So I was thinking about that.
Like, what's the process for applying?
It's a pretty rigorous process. You can the application is online.
Right.
You can get it, and you can.
And anyone can apply.
Anyone can apply. You have to have references, of course, and you have to say why.
Right.
And you have to, and so that's what I'm saying. Why do I want to do this? What do I think I have to offer? Any of the work that I've done, whether it's working in the, advocating for people with disabilities or doing whatever I've done, I've thought about what can I bring? What can I bring to the table? What can I offer in terms of making things work better? So that's where I'm at.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Another fulfilling thing to go after.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think
thanks,
that's
Steve.
good. That was awesome.
It was awesome.
I'll get in touch with you for another one for sure.
Yeah, and I really want to hear more about what happens with you down the road. It sounds like you've got an interesting path for yourself.
Oh man, yeah, it won't be hard to hear about me. I'll be everywhere.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, no, I throw myself in the meat grinder blindly, and
just go for it.
People seem to take notice.
That's great.
No, but one of the things I want to do with the triathlon is that, like, when I used to race a lot, I did this thing. I mean, I've won the award a lot, but I did a thing called the I think I called it the Spirit and Determination Award, after an award I won in Christina Lake. But it was for the athlete who transcends adversity to race.
Yeah.
So I, got a big trophy and then donated a bunch of medallions, and I went to every race to present them.
Aw,
and
good
then,
for you.
Because I feel, the people that win the podium, they deserve to be recognized. They worked hard. But the real stories are the ones in the back of the pack.
Yeah.
And so I actually got in big trouble from the radio, whatever the regional radio was in Summerland.
Really?
Because I went and presented this award. This kid, I was like rubbing my eyes. I couldn't even believe what I was reading when the race director gave me a write-up of him. It's a 12-year-old kid that he had like a heart problem the year before. He had heart surgery or a transplant or something, and then just crushes down this triathlon. So then, I give him an award, and then this other guy, and just give my pitch type thing, and then afterwards, the radio comes up to me and gives me shit for saying, why didn't you tell us that you were doing this? This is amazing. This has to be out there. Like, I don't know. I'm just some dumbass winging it. Like, I don't know. So, and it was so overwhelmingly received, and then bringing out all these stories. So when I do these triathlons, like I'm going to race every weekend possible for the next 5 years, like as soon as I can start racing. And I want to do a podcast, like I still want to do this award.
Yeah.
And then do a podcast with the race director and the recipient of the award at each race.
What a great idea.
To bring these stories out, and then just to inspire
other people that might not have thought of it, or or just to be inspirational to people. Like, it's very inspirational to hear those stories.
So I'm gonna, that's one of the parts of what I want to do a lot of volunteer work when I can, wherever. I think it's important to give back if you can.
I think so.
Like, I've been beat up and down and out, and I've had, in 2008 I was saying I've already cashed in on 10 lifetimes worth of favors, so I don't know how many lifetimes I'm at now. But
that's good.
I don't know, I learned this from Grateful Dead tour. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. When you're up, help someone out. If you're down, don't be afraid to ask for help, man. Because
that's right. We all need help at different times in our lives.
Yeah, everything's cool when everyone's grooving, man.
It is true. It is true.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
No
now,
problem.
do you